Greetings. I don't know if anyone can hear me. I'm trying to set up the stream, and God willing, I'll be with you all shortly. So, some of my computers are slow. Oh, there are people here. I'm going to type in hi. I have to figure out how to send an invite. So, this is not StreamYard. This is Restream. This is slightly different. So, someone says he can hear me. Thank you. So, I'm going to send a. Yeah, I haven't ever had guests on Restream here, so you can try to come in, and I'm gonna hopefully figure out how to get you on. And so this is going to be a big learning experience for me. Thank you all who came over from SFT's channel. So if anyone wants to join in, we have open mic. That's also partly to assist me in learning how to use Restream. So here's the event, and I have another computer here, and it is a little bit sluggish. I'm learning now how to get my YouTube channel a little bit better organized, and hopefully it'll be hierarchically organized so I can have some of my talks and things. I have to figure out how to shut down my last stream. Give me a moment, because I don't want to be streaming through YouTube simultaneously. And let me see if I could try to shut this one down. My simulcast is still going. Protein probability simulcast. Let me see if I'm going to shut down I'm going to end that stream just in case it causes any technical problems. And it says I'm going to end the stream. So thank you for all those who participated in my simulcast experiment. This is going to be the foundation for something that I'm hoping to do with Dapper Dino, where I will simulcast from his channel. So I have to iron out all the bugs and see what went wrong, why I couldn't simulcast successfully. So I'll know maybe better next time how to do this. And so now I think I should have an after show. Alrighty. So by the way, Evidence and Reasons is me. That's one of my sock accounts. Well, it's not a real sock account. And oh my, I got 3 new subscribers tonight. So welcome, any of you that subscribe. Thank you to all the subscribers. And let's see, what can I do? I'm going to test something out. So let's see. I'm going to show a video, one of my favorite videos. This is in the Government National Archives. Let's see if I could do this. Oh, I know, maybe I can. Oh, Bill Morgan. How do I turn? Bill, can I say something? I can see you.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
I can hear you.
Hi, Sal.
Hi. Thank you for coming out and helping me type all this out. So I had a lot of fun tonight, and it's great seeing you. Happy Thanksgiving.
I hear you twice. I think I got to close something. Thank you, Sal. Same to you. How come I hear you twice, Sal? Do you know what I should do? Mute you too.
No, I don't know what's causing it. So
Okay.
it could be feedback. I've had to use kind of these earbuds so that I could.
Someone said mute YouTube.
I don't think it's me, as far as I know.
Okay, I think I did. Thank you, Straight Talk.
Yes, thank you.
Sal, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
And everything I ask is on the 5th grade level because that's where I'm at, but I love this stuff. How do they figure this stuff out?
With great difficulty.
Could you tell a layman?
They have spent millions, perhaps billions of dollars to study this. One of the reasons that's driving it is to help with cancer research and also heritable diseases. And kind of sadly, the way we figure out some of the things is when they're broken in an organism like a human, we begin to say, oh, that gene's kind of important to do this, and we want to find out when this breaks. So it's very painstaking, and we have a new sets of tools that we call like cryo-electron microscopy. We also have these tools called FISH. It's called FISH, where we change the protein so it's luminescent, and we can actually see it in the cell. So there's some cells that are transparent enough. We can actually put a marker. Granted, you're altering the original protein, so we have to be sort of careful and say, okay, we did alter the protein just so that it can be luminescent with all the dyes or whatever. And then we can actually track how things are moving back and forth. So like with the localization signals, that's how I would guess that's how they're estimating where they go. It's not with just luminescence, but any number of techniques. But that's a good question. The other thing is, and this is a little bit it is disconcerting. The models could be wrong that we do build by inference because we can't actually see what's actually happening. So some of the models that we have put forward could actually be wrong, and there are a few areas where we're still concerned.
Just the everything you said was amazing. How they grab the protein and drag it into the nucleus. How in the world do they know that what happens? I mean, it's beyond the electron microscope, isn't it?
They've improved our electron microscopes. They have now what they call cryo-electron microscopy, which is a very cool technology. We might be able to replace some of our analytical techniques. Right now, it's been with some guessing and what they call also X-ray crystallography, which is a good technique, but not as good as what we would like. So we're kind of getting on the verge of being able to actually see some of our models. So just like when we first figured out kind of the quote unquote structure of chemicals in the atom, we actually didn't have electron microscopes to kind of see how good our models were. And it was rewarding to see that the things that we had kind of conceived of in 3D, when we had the instruments to actually quote unquote look, it corresponded to that. And one of them was actually DNA. We didn't have pictures of DNA like we have now that we can see with electron microscopy. So it's very rewarding to see that a lot of the things that we had done by pure inference of things we can't see, we were able to see the unseen realms by the things that we see.
Mm-hmm. What? Oh, I'm sorry. Another layman question. What tells the protein turn on and then it tells the protein turn off? Make stuff, stop making stuff. Layman question.
It depends on the protein. Some don't turn on or off. Collagen is probably a good example. It's not really on or off. It's like a building material. And there are other proteins that have little switches on them that can be, we call them post-translational modifications or steric steric interactions. It's very much, it corresponds to a lot of things in the mechanical world, like air conditioners and switches. So they're basically chemical modifications. Now the thing with proteins is they're just so efficient in how they're constructed that they have so much function in them in just a little bit, just a few molecules. It's just, I don't know that we could build anything that efficient. I mean, when I see human-made things, it has all these, it has so much built into it. I don't know how we could ever compact so much functionality in just a small protein. That's why I was taking the trouble to just show the spelling of these things. It's just like, wow. Because like if we had like a description of how to build an air conditioner from scratch and we did it with words and without diagrams, that would take a lot. But basically biology is just spelling things out. And when you spell it out, the amazing thing is that the chemicals it makes tend to self-assemble in that soup, which is remarkable. We can't build factories. We can't build machines that assemble themselves.
Mm-hmm.
In the cell, there's a lot of self-organization, which we don't know how it does that.
Now, I know in air conditioning, the thermostat says turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off. My goodness, with proteins, there must be billions of things, millions. And what is telling it we need more of this protein? Okay, that's enough of the protein.
Oh, that's another thing. I didn't even talk about regulation tonight. That's a whole nother topic. But one of the things that I focused on is I wanted to talk about things that no one else has talked about, that you won't see I haven't heard any creationists talk about this. Other creationists will talk about gene regulation, which is also important. But that's how it knows how to manufacture just enough. A very good example of that is insulin. If you have too much insulin, I mean, that's why we have problems like diabetes. If the insulin's misregulated, insulin is a polypeptide, a protein, and if it's misregulated too much or too little, someone will die. And that's just one protein. That's just one protein. There are other things, if they're misregulated, it will also cause death or sickness. And how that is regulated, it's similar to the principle of the thermostat with feedback control, active feedback control, except for the thermostat is kind of one-dimensional because you're only dealing with one input, the temperature, hot and cold. Complex systems that have regulation in them with regulated feedback are multi-input, like say a autopilot. And that is some of the hardest math I've ever seen. I've never touched it. There's formal classes in electrical engineering that deal with feedback control. And there's also a mechanical component, but nowadays with electronics, we try to do everything electronically because it's easier to program things than to build mechanical regulators like in the old days. I think mechanical regulators are pretty cool. Like a good feedback control system is like like on a lawnmower. I think it's called the governor assembly. I don't know what, probably jungle jargon would know the terms for, but like when you hit tall grass, it's going to add a little bit more gas to it. So that's actually a pretty sophisticated mechanical regulator. There's differential equations that have to be solved to make a good one. So I think there are all sorts of mechanical, computational, analog regulators built in to biology. I've seen some of them, and when we diagram how the feedback circuit works, it looks just like the diagrams I saw in my electrical engineering classes, except the way the cell does the feedback regulation, it's a more sophisticated circuit, more sophisticated than anything that man can make.
For insulin, what part of the body says, hey, we're too low, hey, we're too high, we got to make more proteins or less proteins? What sense is it?
It's the cells, and and their hormones, and that's about all I know. And just FYI, when someone says they study proteins, it's like, well, yeah, that person probably only studies one or two, and they'll probably do it for like half their professional career or something. Insulin is not my specialty. The only reason I'm acquainted with it is my mother has diabetes, and I've had to learn a lot about insulin. I had some comments here. I just want to acknowledge the people in the chat. Someone said, Sal, I watched your lecture live on SFT. Absolutely awestruck. I have many questions. I would definitely love to have you on Straight Talk TV. Glad to help you, but it's 1 a.m. For Ocho. So thank you very much. God willing, I'll have other talks on my channel, Evidence and Reasons, and there might be a way that we could talk. So Brandon might be giving you some input. Brandon, if you want to join the discussion, I'm providing you a link. Anyone's welcome to come because my voice is going to quit if I don't have someone talk instead of me.
But just a little fun air conditioning. I'm not an expert, but I know just regulating temperature is somewhat complex. But if you try to regulate temperature and humidity, it gets to be about 10 times more complex. Now, that's just two little systems. And these proteins are infinitely more. It just makes you want to cry. You know what I mean? It's just
Brandon said,
humbling.
I got to wake up in 3 hours to go build some. Oh, my goodness. 345 kilovolt electrical equipment. Praise God. I hope you get some sleep so you're not tired and you don't fall asleep on the job, because I wouldn't want you to get electrocuted or injured. But thank you so much for coming out to my talk tonight. God bless you.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon.
Yes, God bless you.
So layman level, what do you do, Sal? What's your day-to-day thing?
I'm a professional right now. For the last 6.5 years, I'm a professional researcher in these topics. I work for Dr. John Sanford. And I was tasked to learn about things like this related to the ENCODE project. And he sent me to the NIH. My prior job before that, I worked for a think tank, the MITRE Corporation. They're a $500 million a year think tank. They may even be worth more than that now, congressionally funded. And my specialty was aviation. And before that, I was in aerospace and aviation. So my background was in physics and electrical engineering, mathematics, and computer science. And when I met Dr. Sanford, he said, "You're hired." And I said, "I don't know anything about biology." He said, "Don't worry, you'll learn it." So he wanted someone who had the computational background and also an engineering mindset, because he felt that biology is best understood by in terms of looking at it in terms of systems and machines, which I'm beginning to see how accurate that is now. And when I started, he said, "I want you to be kind of a mole at the NIH to find out what's going on." I mean, I wasn't covert or anything. No one just bothered to ask me what I'm doing there. They had classes that they offered free, both free and paid to the public, that was taught by the #1 researchers in their fields, and I took them. And then they had lots of free lectures, which I could attend, and then I read the papers there. And he said, "Just report back to me with what you find." So what you saw in the lectures today were things that I found in the process of reporting on the NIH. He also had me. He also introduced me to people like Joe DeWeese, who are professional cancer researchers who study the topoisomerase enzyme. Joe DeWeese is a adjunct professor at Vanderbilt Medical School, and also an associate professor at Lipscomb University, and he runs a lab. And so both John Sanford mentored me, and then he sent me off to other mentors. The creationist community had, because of the internet, we've been able to meet each other and stay in touch and support each other. And I can't believe how many of them are secular researchers who are creationists. You won't find out. I mean, they're not very. They're open about their faith, but that's not their day job. They're not evangelists in the sense of doing that 24 hours. Hey, L, who's L? LPP. John,
What's up?
what's up, man? Thanks for joining us.
Of course,
Hello,
Bill.
John.
Let's go. Bill, man, Sal, you should take this as a compliment. Bill's actually joining an after show. He never joins my after shows.
Do you know why, John?
Why?
He begged someone to see if it worked. I was just going to listen and learn, but he said, please, somebody see if I can get this thing working. So here I am. I just love listening to you guys. I don't have much to add. You guys are so great, and I love it. Keep it up. But Sal, have you seen anyone change their worldview to Christ in the higher echelons of biology?
Not through anything that I did, but John Sanford's one example. But he was what he described himself as a romantic atheist, not a militant atheist. The romantic atheist has probably they're humanistic in that they care for society. They're very nice people, as you could tell. He probably was comparably nice before he became a Christian. I just get that impression that was his personality, always being very generous and kind. And I think he said this on James Tour's channel, so I'm not saying anything that's too private. He said he and his wife were just trying to get their marriage kind of on track, and they just said, let's start going to church, and that was the beginning of it. And he became a Christian. He was a theistic evolutionist, and then an old earth creationist, then a young earth creationist, and that process took about 10 years from the time he was converted. So I actually get along very well with old earth creationists. I was one for a very long time, like 30 years.
This is a great story. Many years ago, I heard John speak at a church out here in California, and afterwards he said, any questions? I said, yes. Could you share your testimony? And I always think a creationist should share their testimony when they give a talk. And as I recall it, and I remember it pretty well, John said they were having marital problems near Cornell, and his wife said, hey, the local church gives marital counseling.
I didn't hear that. Wow.
And John said they really, really loved them and helped them with their marriage, and John loved the church. So he was going to the church, and he made friends. He loved the social aspect. And then the preacher, who was his friend, I'll have you fill in the blank, Sal. The preacher said, hey, John, our third grade teacher is going to be out of town for a month. Could you, what?
Teach Sunday school.
My understanding, he was teaching Sunday school to young people, started opening up his Bible, and became captivated and converted by the sword of the Spirit, the Word of God. So isn't it cool that one of the world's greatest professors had to teach Sunday school and found Christ? And I'm 99% sure that's the story.
And you know, it's amazing. I've worked and known him for years, but I've just been very, this may sound surprising. We almost always talk about science. I try not to probe his theology and vice versa. And because that's kind of a sensitive area, even among Christians. And I never heard all these details. So this is news to me. I wish he's a very private individual. And it's like, I wish he would come out just a little more and just share a little bit more about your life. And
could you share your testimony?
I'm kind of out of gas right now. I was hoping you and LPP would give me a break here.
Well, were you Catholic and neutral, and what got you excited about Christ? What was the turning point?
I'm happy to share my testimony, but I've been talking for almost 3 hours straight now. My voice is about to quit. So
okay, John, could you share your testimony?
Oh, maybe he's tied up. Okay, so
no, I'm here. Sorry, I was on mute. Well, I mean, my initial testimony in terms of finding, becoming saved and such was, as a kid, I had the blessing of growing up in a very godly household. But went off to college and made the decision to go live in the world, and I was going to do it for a decade, and I did, and then I found myself hanging out in ICU, being told I should be dead, and had the moment of realization that God was holding me to account in relation to my promise, and that as a child of God, we get chastised. It's actually a sign of love from our Father, and I was getting the ultimate spanking, but being told that it wasn't my last chance, and woke me up. And then fast forward to now, that was 8 years ago, and fast forward to now, and we're having these kind of conversations. So it was a moment of demarcation in my life, and a dramatic paradigm shift for me, just mentally as well as spiritually. Of it's those moments where we must recognize that there is something much more than the here and now of our existence, and until we actually begin to contemplate these things and not be completely consumed and distracted by the world, we won't really be able to appreciate our existence at all. In reality, to me, I don't think you can truly appreciate, even on a fundamental level, you're not truly appreciating your existence until you truly begin to contemplate like what enables you to exist. And it's something that we all so many of us take for granted. I know I did. It's like we don't think about like what is actually happening right now in order for me to even be uttering these words right now is so mind-bendingly complex and just indicative, and then exemplifies the genius of our Creator.
Mm-hmm.
And we take it for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, one of the things communication has such an impact for is, I know you've heard me talk about this before, Bill, but I shouldn't be able to talk based on where my brain hemorrhage was. Like it's in the spot that controls verbal communication. Like that's where I had a gigantic brain hemorrhage, and yet I talk. And I had no therapy after the fact and all that kind of stuff. And I can tell you that the neurologists and neurosurgeons were all stunned that A, I wasn't dead, and B, that even since I wasn't, that I was able to function. Didn't have massive cognitive deficit. And anyway, enough of my long-winded diatribe, but that's put a lot of things into perspective for me.
I'm not a pastor, but if I ever was, I would have a book where every believer in the congregation would share their testimony, because I don't know how many people are in this chat. Every conversion is a miracle. Amen? And
Agreed.
Every conversion is a fascinating story. And just today, my wife and I met a Christian, and hey, could you share your testimony? It's like a movie. I mean, it's just so exciting of how people come to Christ. And everybody is going to face death like you did, John. I mean, you were on the precipice. And at that time, were you a little bit, scared spiritually besides just physically?
No, that's the ultimate irony. Is God made it extraordinarily clear to me that I was being held to account, but it was not my time.
Wow.
And I had no fear. I knew I was going to be fine. I mean, it's kind of ironic actually. When I was getting wired up to basically before they knocked me out to go cut my skull open, I had all the nurses were coming in, and it's going to be fine. Everybody's trying to like calm me and let me know if I was going to be okay and all this kind of stuff. And I just said, I'm good. Let's go. Let's rock and roll. And I remember people kind of looking at me like, this guy may come out of this a vegetable or die. And he's like, let's do it. And I mean, like I said, I went in with no fear. And I mean, I woke up that afternoon and I was talking and came on a conversation and got out of bed and walked. And it's no, don't get me wrong. A couple days after that, I don't remember. I remember like the first 3 days after my surgery, pretty vividly actually. It's actually a very interesting commonality with brain surgery. Like usually people are assuming there's not like massive damage that's resulted of it. A lot of times people will come out of it, be cognizant for a couple days, and then kind of go into a fog for a couple weeks. And that's exactly what happened to me. Yeah, I was very lucid for several days, and then kind of went into full scale fog mode for a couple weeks. I remember glimpses of it, but
Are your parents still alive, John?
They are. Yep, 74 and 75.
Could you do me a favor?
What's that?
Tomorrow, give them a call and just give them a simple thank you for raising you spiritually. And almost say nothing after that. It freaks parents out when we thank them short and sweet. And everybody listening too, just thank your parents. Say, wow, because they gave you a foundation for life. So maybe just out of the blue, give them a thanks for Bill, okay?
I think that's a very good idea. It's actually something I contemplate quite a bit, actually. I think about that a lot in relation, especially what's going on in 2020. I haven't thought about this quite a bit over the years, but especially this year, I've thought about it quite a bit when I observe well, to put it in context, I was in a grocery store earlier today, and I was kind of people watching as I was walking through shopping, and it really kind of struck me how the body language of so many people was extremely sad. And you could just see it in their facial, even though you couldn't see all their faces because of the mask and stuff, you could see it in their eyes. You could see it in their posture and just the hesitancy with which way people were moving. And then even when there was any level of communication, so many people were extraordinarily hesitant and like almost afraid to even talk. Mm-hmm. And I kind of thought about that in context of, appreciation for existence, and then really what level of, what cloud of uncertainty must have descended upon so many throughout this year, as that the facade of control that humans, especially in Western civilization, like to think that we have, and forget that in an instant all of it can be taken away from you, and then ultimately you're left with nothing but your mind, and even that could be taken from you. And to me, it was one of the moments of, like, when it happened to me especially, was my ego was annihilated. Not from a confidence perspective. My confidence didn't decline, but my arrogance did. And I think that's something a lot of times people forget about, is there is a massive difference between confidence and arrogance. And in modern society, because so many people have such a minimal amount of confidence, they think that it must coincide with arrogance if they interact with somebody that is confident. And I think it's a major issue in so many facets of society and just human interaction, of like, if you don't have the sense of self-worth and feeling that you actually have something of bearing and something you're good at that you're bringing to the table, you're not going to be able to take any level of leadership. You're not going to be able to actually act with confidence, and everything you're doing is a facade. And then when that facade gets shattered, what do you have left in terms of self-worth? And I think we're seeing a lot of that in as a result of the COVID madness. But I think so much of that stems from the fact that, how much confidence do you actually have if at the root of your own level of self-understanding, at least from your perception, you're nothing but a deterministic animal that has no eternal existence possibility, and basically is nothing of substance from a cosmic level. If that doesn't destroy your at the fundamental level, doesn't destroy your, like, any level of confidence you might have, and then ability to approach challenge with, hey, I can do this. I don't know what does.
Well, I hate going to Costco because I know you play poker and I play poker too, and I just like to look at people and give them. We should play, me, you, and Sal, have a little fun because I know you love poker too, Sal. But
Yeah,
I look at
Sal's
people-
blackjack. Sal's all blackjack.
Blackjack.
Oh, really? Wow.
I would make a terrible poker player, because blackjack is just straight numbers. It's just, so I have no
No psychology.
quote Clint Eastwood, a man's got to know his limitations.
Good.
And I'm not going to play poker because there'll be guys like John Maddox and
Yeah,
all
sneaky
these
guy.
other guys.
You got to be sneaky, and you're not sneaky, Sal. But I go to Costco and I look at these people and I hate it. I feel, I call it they're prisoners of their fear. Atheists are prisoners of their fear. They're in a delusion like they're never going to die, and they're just in such denial. And we don't want to die, I don't believe. I worked construction with a guy named Columbus McCoy. He had a third grade education. He was one of the smartest people I ever met. He said, Bill, everybody want to go to heaven, but ain't nobody want to die. And I think that even sums it up for the Christians. Like, we're not in a hurry to die, but we don't have that prisoner of fear that these people do. And when it comes to atheists, you can believe whatever you want, right? But when they lie to the teens and the youth about eternal things, that's anger in me. They're just sucking the hope and the joy out of life out of the youth. And the reason I know that is I evangelize to the youth, and they're a lost generation eager for the gospel. And the atheists have done a wonderful job of just sucking the joy and hope out of so many of our young people and making them prisoners of fear and hopelessness. What do you guys think about that?
Most of my fights have actually, most of my heartbreak has been the churches. I have been volunteering to help teach the youth, not just me, but many. And the leadership will say, oh, that's great. And then they'll never follow up. So actions speak louder than words. Of course, they're not going to say, no, that's a terrible idea. But the way they treat us is like, well, we don't want to teach Christianity by appealing to sources outside of the Bible. So this whole thing of just even talking about cellular biology is showing that there's a creator. They want nothing of it. Partly also too, because they're donor base, they may have 10% of their donor base that are theistic evolutionists. That's enough to it's like, yeah, I don't want to lose 10% of my money or my donors or the families in the church. And that'll shoot it down. So yeah, even a small minority can control what goes on in a congregation.
Sal, I got a tough question for you. Ready?
Yeah.
Do you think your pastor is born again?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. And why I would hope so, because I've had my moments in my Christian walk where it didn't look too good as far as my behavior, and but I think I was a believer, and I would extend the same standard to anyone else. That I would just hope that they're not knowing something, or they're just in a season of life, and on some level, it's also not my place to judge them. Because God's the one that searches the hearts and minds. I will say this: there have been pastors that were not my pastor that I just knew they're charlatans.
Amen.
Something just told me these are just bad apples, and eventually it would just come out somehow. For some of them, it was so obvious. The most recent one was Josh Harris, who wrote the book I Kissed Dating Goodbye.
Wow.
And I knew he was a bad apple. I could just sense it. And in the churches I was going to, people are fawning over him. I'm just like, why? Have you read his book? Doesn't appeal hardly to scriptures. There's nothing biblical about it. It's just I was just like mortified, and I kind of kept it to myself, and I kind of advised. It was really funny. I inherited a Bible study, and I think I was about 40 years old at the time, and there were all these 19-year-old girls that were coming to the study. Toward the end of the year, they're just more and more. It became a social club, and I'm just like, I know what you really want to talk about, and I'm not going to talk about it because I know nothing about this. But finally, the last study that I gave to close out the year, I said, yeah, they probably want to talk about marriage and dating, and so I gave it my best. I said, well, just look at the Bible. Does God guarantee that every contract or decision you make, you won't feel pain? And because it says in the Psalms, the ones who's worthy to stand on the Lord's hill is someone who swears to their own hurt. If you make a vow for better or worse, God will delight in you holding to that vow, because the early Christian church, keeping your word was something very, very sacred. And I tried to give examples of how people could be making decisions that are the commitments that are difficult. And I pointed out to them I knew 3 young ladies who they got married, wonderful husbands, but then their husbands died within like the first few years, either sickness or something, car accident. I said, God doesn't guarantee you that if you do all these things just right, you're going to live happily ever after. And it's really kind of hard to that's very deeply ingrained in us, that if we do this, then we get happily ever after. And I can't blame anyone for feeling that way. And that's how I felt in many stages of my life, even late stages. It's like, if I could just do this, then my life will be better. And yet this book came out, I Kissed Dating Goodbye, and I was like, this is a prosperity gospel, and a lot of people are going to be really disappointed. Well, and it hardly quoted anything from the Bible, hardly talked about the love of Jesus. And I'm like, yeah, this is charlatanism. I could just smell it. It just has that stench. Lo and behold, in 2019, the author, he said, I'm divorcing my wife. And he started showing up in gay pride events. I'm like, yeah, totally does not surprise me. I could just smell it a mile away. The guy was not appealing to Christian virtues. It was a veiled prosperity gospel. And I knew it was bad advice, and lots of people were going to eventually got divorced trying to follow his advice. It's like, yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
I'll tell you one of the most interesting things about re-echoing. One of the most interesting things I've learned about relationships in general, I actually learned from my mother. So my parents just celebrated their 53rd wedding anniversary, and found out it's like less than 2% of people in modern America make it to 50 years. But one of the things my mom told me was, and it's very interesting because what I'm about to tell you, she told me, actually turns out to have scientific backing. But she was telling me how her and my father had actually, it multiple times throughout their marriage, had come very close to, failing. And that each time had seemed to be worse than the last. But each time they had made the conscious decision that they were going to attempt to rely on God, and as a team, they were going to attempt to overcome it and look for God's direction and things of that nature. And then she told me every time we overcame it, our love grew exponentially. And even though the next challenge we ended up facing, 6-7 years down the road, was actually worse. Like, the challenge was worse, but overcoming it got easier. And each time our love grew. Anyway, I got curious about that and actually did some research. And it turns out that about every 7 years, there is a dramatic spike in divorce. In terms, like, you're very, every 7 years there's something happens, and people either marriages fail or they succeed. And interestingly enough, the more 7-year cycles your marriage has made it through, the higher your probability of it lasting. And so that was very interesting. But when you look at modern society, what do we have? We've made divorce so easy and the separation just to be the norm that people are not even trying to overcome those challenges. It's I give up. Let's go our separate ways. And people aren't overcoming those challenges. Therefore, they're not having that spike in their love. And very often, I would say a good big portion of that is they weren't doing what my mother and father told me about, which was we have to make the conscious decision that A, we can't do it by ourselves. B, we have to do it as a team. And C, we have to have God's help. And looking towards God and trying to be more like Christ is the only way we're going to be able to overcome, insert whatever the problem is. And while everything I just said is honestly, in my opinion, common sense, it's extraordinarily rare common sense in modern society, even inside of the church, which theoretically should have that level. Theoretically, we should know this, right? But the quote unquote Christian divorce rate and marriage failure rate is every bit as high as the secular world. And I mean, it's the level of hypocrisy in the quote unquote church is reaching epic levels. And I think a good portion of it also stems from people like you were talking about, Sal. We've been conditioned that we're supposed to be followers of men, quote unquote men, right? That are in these leadership positions rather than Christ. And when those individuals inevitably fail because they're humans, somehow because so many quote unquote Christians have placed their quasi faith in that human, their faith gets decimated.
Shell, if you got to help your mom, that takes priority.
Thank you. Will, have we met before?
Yeah, we did. We did meet on LPP stream. Remember me? I was, I think maybe evolutionists or haters of God or something like that.
Oh, are you the same as that? Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna attend to Mom, and thank you for keeping the after show alive, John and Will and Bill, and for also helping me test out helping me develop my skills with Restream. So I'll be attending to Mom now for a little bit. God bless you all.
God bless you too.
Thank you, Sal. Take good care of her.
Hey, what's up, Bill? I don't think we've met up before. I think I emailed you about some certain topic about evolution.
Are you the French-Canadian young man?
Yeah, it's him. Yep.
Yeah, we talked after one of my debates.
Yep. I had like question and everything. I mean, I'm still going to school currently. They're trying to brainwash me about the subject of evolution, but I'm keeping on the topic, and I think it's a great opportunity to understand how the fraud is and learn about the two sides and being able to expose it later on when I get more subject about it.
Well, and John, I'll ask you another fun question. That's how I roll. What would you say are the two main things a pastor of a church should be focusing on?
Should be focusing on?
Yeah, if you were the pastor of a church, Will, what do you think the two most important things would be?
The first most important thing is probably preaching the gospel of God, the kingdom, getting people saved and getting them into the church of the body of Christ. And I would say preaching against spiritually warfare about the king of the darkness of this world.
Wow.
Because there's so much darkness of this world, like everything in this world is really deep, and we got to expose how the world is run by Satan himself.
You have so much wisdom, young man. John, what would you say?
Well, I mean, point one, obviously. I'd say point two would be in conjunction with what Will just said, focusing on the realism that is this, like the level of the spiritual plane is more real than what we currently experience, and that everything that we needs to be viewed through that lens
Mhm.
of, Will's talking about the spiritual combat, and like that's not figurative, like it's literal. And
Yep.
when one of my biggest issues, every reason I'm saying this, one of my biggest issues with the modern quote unquote church is, not all obviously, but a significant percentage of them they've turned into the social club of very ethereal. If they are talking about things that are spiritual, it's extraordinarily ethereal and nebulous, and it's the stroking harps in the clouds type stuff. And which, to be honest, I mean, that's boring. Like, it's interesting for a short period of time, and then it's like, okay, so why am I intrigued by this supposed new eternal level of existence I'm going to have that has no, like, that doesn't sound fun, right? Like, why would I want to do this exactly? I mean, it's initially you can feel interesting, but it's going to go away pretty rapidly, and I think it leads to surrender to temptation of, well, if I'm going to be living in this rather nebulous existence, then I better do some stuff of substance while I can. And the irony of that, obviously, is that mindset is exactly the same mindset that dominates the non-believer world too. And then we wonder why so many believers fall. And while simultaneously, and I think it's that in conjunction with the fact they're not being given the substance that's needed to be able to actually have reasonable expectation of victory and overcoming of the world. I mean, I know that for myself personally, I mean, I lost that battle for a decade, and not just from a overcoming perspective, but I willfully surrendered. I mean, and I'm one that had no excuse. I had the knowledge, the spiritual knowledge, and I still caved. And I don't blame that on my parents, because they did everything they could to teach me, and I had a ridiculous amount of knowledge in my head that gives me no excuse. And yet I still caved into the temptations of the world. So I can only imagine those who didn't have the foundation that I was granted. I can only imagine how hard it must have been it must be for other people. And then, like I said, people in the church, we wonder why all these things are happening. Like, I don't understand how this could happen. Really? It's pretty obvious, folks. Let's start to face reality.
Yeah, and may I add something real quick? I don't know if you guys know Pastor Steven Anderson. He's a Christian. He's a Baptist, and he preached a lot against evolution and everything in his church, and it's really amazing to see how people keep on the subjects. Maybe you guys know Matt Powell.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he was going to Stephen Anderson Church, and Stephen Anderson is such a great pastor.
Well, Will, you answered what I think is the correct. I think the two main things a pastor should care about is making disciples of all nations and equipping the saints. Now, they mostly care, not all, about paying the mortgage, paying the staff, etc. But if they really care about making disciples and equipping the saints, why in the world wouldn't they welcome Sal teaching people about creation? Because that will lead people to Christ and give confidence to the believers. And it seems harder and harder to find pastors who really care about making disciples and equipping the saints. They want to make you feel good, feel happy, feel comfy. It's a sorry state of affair. There's two ways a person can die. Externally, like a bullet or a car accident, or internally. Two ways a church could die, externally or internally. Which one's more deadly? The attacks from the atheists or dying from the inside? What do you guys think?
Yeah, and I mean, that's especially what the Bible says. I mean, if you go look into in First Peter 3:15, it says, "But sanctify the Lord God in your heart, and be ready always to give an answer to everyone who asks you, why do you have so much reason and hope inside of you?" I mean, we should always be ready to give an answer to everyone. And I think preaching against creation evolution is a great way to bring people to Christ. Personally, I'm probably gonna destroy that word. I like using presuppositionalist. Yeah, it's pretty hard word to say. I think like because if you go into an evidence point of view, if you don't acknowledge God as the ultimate reference for all facts, you cannot really have facts without God, right? Because it can just be a mental deception or just you being high on drugs or some type of stuff. So you cannot be sure of anything if you don't acknowledge God at the first cause, and the Bible says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all knowledge. So if you don't accept God, you cannot know anything.
Amen. And I remember years ago, there used to be a cartoon called Doonesbury. I don't know if John's old enough to remember Doonesbury.
Oh yeah, I remember Doonesbury.
And a lot of times I didn't like it, but there was one about this young couple shopping for a church. And one of them was, wow, they sure got a lot of rules and regulations. Let's try this other church over here. They have a volleyball league. And it's when people laugh, it's usually because of tragedy. And that makes me laugh because it's a tragedy. People are looking for the best, perhaps, social church, one that'll make them feel positive and happy. And really, positive and happy is peace with Jesus Christ.
Mm,
But
yeah,
Sal, we were talking about what a shame. Your pastor is missing out that you're not teaching those that are interested in how science glorifies God, how science can lead people to Christ. I would have never listened to the gospel if it weren't for science. I thought Christians were nuts because that was my
exactly.
brainwashing. That you are
Yep.
anti-scientific bigot nuts.
We love science. We absolutely love science. There's something we hate though, and it's the Bible speak about it in First Timothy chapter 6 verses 20. Oh Timothy, be aware of science falsely so called. That's falsely knowledge. Keep what I commend to you. Keep your trust in me. And that's what we should be aware of. I mean, the whole thing about evolution is just trying to go against God. If you compare evolution theory to the Bible, just like just want to contradict the Bible. The Bible make it clear. And when you look Genesis, right, God probably says like 40 times after their own kind. You're like, okay, God, I get it, but he's still saying it over and over that they will seek after their own kind. And that's just amazing.
10 times, right? 10 times after their kind, after
Yep.
their kind. It's like, hey, stupid, how many times do I have to tell you? After their kind. But Satan has done a great job to make Christians ashamed of the gospel. Any
Yep.
comments on that, guys?
And yeah, there's a verse in Revelation where it says Satan who deceived the whole world, and the Bible even says that when the Antichrist will come, if we are not protected by God, he can deceive us. He could lead us away from God. This is how much the world is into deception right now.
Yep.
Yeah,
I remember,
I had to leave my church recently, like 2 weeks ago. I found out that there were like theistic evolution, so it's pretty sad. They were like theistic evolution and Calvinist, hyper Calvinist, so it's pretty sad.
it's really sad for a Christian to hold on to a scientific premise invented by people trying to disprove God.
Exactly. It's like I don't know if you ever heard about that channel. It's called Inspire Philosophy, and they're like basically Christian, and they like just show how evolution is a facts of life, and every Christian should believe in evolution. They don't say believe; they said accept evolution. Always got to look for that word. Whenever you speak to atheists, they're like, "Oh, why don't you accept evolution? It's a facts." You know, I don't know if you ever seen Michael Ross. You know about him? He's like an evolutionist. He used to be a Christian, and he's like know a lot about evolution. He quote, "Evolution was a religion from the beginning. It is still a religion nowadays. We believe in it. We don't accept it. We believe in it." And
Will, let me quiz you, okay? Ready? Here comes my next
yep,
question. Why would a Christian and someone who really does trust Christ and love God believe in the theory of evolution?
because they're deceived. They go they base themselves on men. They don't trust completely on God. The Bible says really clear in the book of Psalm, it is better to trust in the Lord than to trust in men. So they think as men says so, it must be true, but that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says just go around the evidence and you know examine everything and come to a conclusion, and it will always lead to God. And this is a
Wow.
fact.
I pray, Will, you never drink alcohol or use drugs because you have a great, blessed brain, and that will only ruin it.
Yeah, I mean, and especially like alcohol, I just think like it doesn't really smell good either. It doesn't look really nice, and it's I don't know. It's like kind of a thing if people fall in, it's really hard to get out.
I don't know, man. You're vaping at 15.
Yeah, yeah. I should stop doing that. I kind of got like really addicted to it, but I'm looking to stop. Like this is my last bud, and after I'm just gonna get out of it because it's like before I got saved. Like, so I have a huge life. Like I don't live with my dad, so like only a mother, right? So it's just living with my mother. And before I got like to Christianity, I had problem with like video games and everything. I wasn't going to school and everything, and so I did a therapy like for my video game. And when I left it, like when I finished it, like I didn't ever have friend really. I was like pretty much rejected. So like I find like type of friend, but they weren't the best like you know type of friend, because I just wanted to fit in and do whatever they want, and I got like addicted to vaping. So yeah, and everything. And after I got saved, and I kind of put something in my old life away, but still, this is a thing I need to work on. And like, I'm not really proud of it. I think it's pretty stupid, and I don't even know what I'm still doing it.
Well,
So
listen, don't feel too guilty, man. I get what you're saying, and listen, I smoked cigarettes for a decade, so actually more than a decade. The I will say this though, what you're vaping, does it have nicotine, or are you just doing like flavors?
just flavor.
Okay, well then you're in the position where you can do this. You've got to see right now. You don't have the. You're lucky because you don't have the nicotine addiction. Do not go down that rabbit hole because then you're stuck with overcoming both a psychological and a physical addiction.
Yeah, and
And
I'm probably just gonna try to grab candy tomorrow. Like ask my mom to go like buy gums and candy and just stick on candies. I
well,
just like the flavor.
here's what you should do. You should get a. You should not refill your vape. You have like a vape pen, a vape pen.
Yeah, I mean I have
Okay.
like a mod, but I don't use it anymore because it just burned my lungs.
Okay. So here's what you need to do. Don't refill it, but continue. But for like for a while, continue to take the action. Like act like you are doing your vape. Just don't refill it. And a if you do that for a week or two, you will come to the realization of what the heck am I doing?
Yeah.
And I tried to go down the vape route to quit smoking and stuff. And what I eventually had to do to quit smoking was I actually went and bought I bought a carton of cocoa bean cigarettes, and there's no nicotine, it's just cocoa beans, right?
Mhm.
And whenever I wanted a cigarette, I just lit up and I smoked one. And I was able to beat the physical addiction that way because I didn't want to try and take on the physical and the psychological addiction at the same time. About a week goes by and the physical addiction withdrawal symptoms were all gone. Then I just kept smoking like normal. And then about a month later, by the time I was finishing off that carton, I realized I was like, this is the most disgusting thing I've ever done. I don't know how I'm doing this. How the heck did I do this for a decade? And that was it. But I've seen other people try to do what I'm talking about with the vape pen. Same logic, right? You just keep doing the action, right? And then eventually you have that psychological moment where you're like, because you already don't want to do it anymore, right? So it's just breaking that psychological component. And as soon as you do have that moment of like, this is dumb, you can just discard it and be over it.
Yeah, and it's actually like super expensive, like just burn down stuff. And I like what I've learned. It's not really the nicotine that's actually bad, from what they say. It's like the vapor, like it do on your lungs. Like it's kind of a water stuff, or I don't really
There's the
know
whole
what it
aspect
is.
of there's fiberglass and there's like crystallization of your lung tissue is
Oh,
one of
that's
is a bad thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. So like the vape, some of the chemicals in the vape are the same as the chemicals that are in menthol cigarettes. So you don't have some of the like the nicotine, some of the other carcinogens that you do in a normal cigarette, but you do have a lot of the same components that are the negatives from like traditional menthol cigarettes.
Hey,
Yeah,
Will.
actually, yeah, I'm just gonna like there's like just I'm just gonna throw it away right away because better finish it right now than tomorrow or another time.
Hey, Will.
Yep.
I learned this from an old guy. Some fantastic advice for overcoming sin. And nobody's ever perfect, don't get me wrong. But everybody listening too, I think you'll get a lot out of this. And I'll address it to you, Will. Every sin starts with a little thought. And then you start thinking about it more. And the more you think about it, it almost becomes irresistible, right?
Yep. That's what. Yeah.
Will and everybody try this. It is so powerful. The next time that little tiny thought of vaping pops in your head and it's only a tiny little circle, immediately, by name, pray for the salvation of somebody that you love. Could you give me the first name of somebody that you love that you would love to be saved?
Yeah, my uncle.
Could you give me his first name?
Yep, Eve.
Okay. Will, the next time you think of vape, immediately pray for his salvation. Maybe make it a 2-minute prayer. Oh, dear Lord in heaven, I pray for my uncle. I love my uncle. My uncle needs you, Lord. Give me wisdom. Give him wisdom. Convict him. And if you keep doing that, I get goosebumps. You're going to turn into a prayer warrior and you're going to crush that little temptation like a bug and get your mind off the sin. So, Will, the next time you have the slightest little urge to vape, don't think about the vaping. Pray for the salvation of your uncle. How do you
Amen.
think that'll work?
Yep, that will work. And it's like just putting your mind on God, He's just gonna refresh you away. He's gonna put you away. And the best thing as Christians should do is just trust in God, not trust on ourselves, just on what God's gonna do, because it's God that works inside of us. It's not ourselves. It's what God's gonna do. That He gave us the power, and to Christ, He gave us the power to do everything.
And if you want to contact me, I won't volunteer John, but he probably would too. You can tell us how you're doing with your vaping.
Yeah, can you send me your email? I don't have it anymore.
Okay. You got a pen?
Yeah, let me just. All right, what is it?
Billy Jack 1, the number 1 at Hotmail.
Billy Shack.
Billy Jack, Jack.
All right, Billy Jack.
The number 1.
Yeah, at hotmail.com. All right,
But
here you go. I'll nod it in my folder. All right, here you go. I got it.
Yeah, apparently people still use Hotmail. I know it's outdated, but the occasional
yeah,
person still uses Hotmail.
yeah,
Although Bill, you've come on up and you're not using AOL, so that's
my wife does. Hey, I'm autistic. If something works, I stick with it.
what's ironic is there's actually still AOL is still like the number 2 email address, and at AOL email address is still the number 2 on the planet right now.
Wow, shocking. Absolutely shocking. But guys, what do you think about that? Whenever you're struggling with a sin, it always starts with a little tiny thought. Pray for someone specifically by name for their salvation. That's a good talking point. What do you think?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with that.
You're not going to hear any arguments from me if you're praying for somebody to be saved. So,
Here we go. Is that in his image?
yes, sir.
Man, I'm mad at you.
Well, I watched that dumpster fire and I went, I can't host this. This is going to explode. I'll let John do it.
Yeah, that was a weird one. What's funny is, okay, I've been getting all this grief because I refuse to descend into a prop logic dumpster fire, and somehow that means that I'm the idiot because I refused to, even after presenting 7 different firmly well-established prop logic arguments, they wanted more, or refused to even continue the conversation. Like, what the heck is that? That makes no sense. It's like, I'm not going to go down any rabbit hole.
You're never going to present enough evidence to someone who's a hardened atheist. They're just going to.
Well, and those guys claim to just be agnostics.
Not to be rude, and you kind of brought this up, but a lot of agnostics are just cowardly atheists. They just don't want to admit to taking a metaphysical position.
Yeah, real quick. Atheist and agnostic, like they both deny God. It's just one deny it directly and one indirectly deny it.
Well, the fact that there's also the agnostic atheist. It's like, really, at what point are you guys just going to admit you're all the same?
Yeah, Saul, is it okay if I drop a link into my Christian Discord of this so people can come chat?
I'm learning how to do this. Go ahead and try. If it doesn't get through, I haven't.
No, sorry.
He's
asking if he can invite people from his Discord to come to the after show.
Oh,
he's asking permission to help promote the after show.
Oh yes. So, yeah,
I'll drop a link.
I'm kind of I'm having a Joe Biden moment here. I'm kind of running out of gas.
That's funny.
So yes, and if there's any way I can help you, see, sometimes when I have presentations like that, I'm so spent, I don't have any gas left over.
No, that's totally understandable. Well, and that's why I'm mad in his image, because he was supposed to do an after show after my debate the other night, and then he bailed. And then I had to do it. I mean, I didn't have to do it, but I had to do it because
I actually had one set up. But you left a comment saying, "Hey, do you want to?" And I'm like, "Well, if you're volunteering to do one, I'll let you do it, man. That thing's such a dumpster fire."
Well, no, I was asking because I was going to promote. Because I checked out your channel and I was going to be like, "Hey," I was looking to see if there was one like set up to go, and I was going to be like, "Hey, there's going to be an after show." In his image, I was going to do a promo for you, and then that's why I asked you.
I apologize. I took that as because I'd watched at that point I'd watched the first 30 minutes of the debate, and I knew what a dumpster fire it was, and I'm like, you know what? I think I'll just let him do this because.
Yeah, that was a crazy one. Although I tell you what, I really want to know how old Ask Yourself is, because he really strikes me as a separated from reality child of and by child I mean 21, 22-year-old who has no understanding of the real world, has not real world experience. It's all hypothetical.
Well, not to digress, John, and I think I know the answer. And I hate to be, putting out any fires, but do you think if you had made 50 points with that guy, he would have said, "You know what? You're right. There is a God"?
No.
This is my opinion. These guys' minds are made up. Our goal is the fertile soil that might change their mind. But these, the Ron Garretts of the world, they know our arguments as good as we do. I don't think our words could lead them to Christ. We can be compassionate, but the fertile minds listening will eat this stuff alive. So I encourage you guys to keep making the debates, but never get frustrated with the people we debate. Their minds, they know the arguments.
Oh yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, that's why I make it a point to call these guys out and their actions. Before the debate started last night, I literally said I have refused to go into this. Is in the backstage, right? I'm like, I'm not going to let this degenerate into a stupid prop logic, black hole. We're not every piece of evidence I present to support my argument does not have to be in a prop logic statement. I'm sorry. That's not how I'm going to progress through a debate. I don't have to come up with no, here's the argument and here's why I think that X is true. And do you deny that this supports my argument? And if you never want to even allow here's what supports my argument to be uttered, and you just want to nitpick whether or not from a strict logic and philosophical, talking point perspective whether or not your argument is valid. I mean, that's how do you come to any conclusion? Oh wait, you don't. And
that's the whole point of being an agnostic, John, is that
Right.
they don't want to take any positions on anything.
Yeah,
And again, this is why, like, and the thing is, agnosticism is completely inconsistent with any real world decision making, because in the real world you have to take a position and stand on it. Now, you may figure out you're wrong later. That happens all the time. You should be open to that, but you can't sit there and say, well, I just don't know. Eventually you got to make a choice.
yeah, well, and the biggest problem I have, and this coincides with kind of what you're talking about, Bill, of some of these guys do understand the arguments, right? They have been presented with the evidence and they're consciously refusing to accept it.
yeah.
Then on the flip side, you've got a lot of the agnostics who, and this doesn't apply to all of them, but it does to a lot of them. They claim they just don't know, but then they refuse to even listen to the arguments beyond the surface level talking point. And they consciously refuse to actually go and do any research for themselves, and then claim, well, I just don't know and I haven't been convinced. It's like, okay, so do you not have, I actually kind of made this in the heat of the moment last night. I mean, I basically said this exact thing of, like, you lack the IQ points required to go and actually have understanding of these deeper points, or you just refuse to even consider them. Which one is it? Because at this point, either you're too dumb to understand, or you're refusing, because the level of evidence and the ease of access to it has reached a point in modern society where there is no excuse. This is not, even 100 years ago. Heck, this isn't 50 years ago when you actually had to go to the library and go have the time to read a book. Like now, while you're taking a dump, you can be reading stuff on your phone. So what's your excuse for not having gone and researched any of these coherent and well defined and well established and expanded upon, cases in support of God's existence? Like, what's your excuse?
Well, see, I think a lot of them think they have, because they've spent so much time in the atheist blogosphere. They think that they know all these arguments that creationists and whoever will present have been refuted, when in fact, but they never go back to the primary source and actually read the primary literature. And I find this is even true with a theistic evolutionist, that they almost never, and the very few times they do, it's generally just to quote mine and not to understand, actually read the primary material to try to actually understand. They're just looking for talking points. They aren't actually looking for answers.
Yeah, I feel like a good way to approach atheists too sometimes is just asking them, why don't you believe in God? What is the evidence that lead you not to believe in God? Why don't you believe in it? It's not because the evidence are not there, it's because they just don't want to believe in him. And when you approach them by asking them, what type of evidence would you accept for God to be there? They don't even have an answer. They don't even know what type of thing they will accept for God existence. So it just makes their worldview pathetic. It's really
That's
make it stupid.
100% true. Will, I was in a Nephilim free after show, and there was at least one, I think maybe two atheist agnostics there, and I asked them that question. I said, what evidence would convince you that God exists? And I got sputters.
Yep. And they'll say, well, there's no evidence, but we don't know what type of evidence we'll accept.
Well, last night on the after show, were you still around for the P Tango dumpster fire portion?
No, I went to bed.
Okay, so you were around for the when Amy was refusing, but I did this very similar process with this guy, P Tango. He's an idiot, and it was okay if we progressed from, like, you're out in the middle of a field with a friend who's handicapped. A being appears and says, stand up and walk. And before your very eyes, you watch their like leg muscles form, bones grow, and they stand up and start walking. And you're like, did that convince you that God exists? No. Okay. Now that person says, where do you want to go? And you say, I want to see Mars. And boom, you teleport to Mars. And then you're being shown the cosmos. And then, was that enough? No. Well, what? Okay, suddenly you're on the top of Mount Everest and you're observing the world. How about now? No. Okay, and then I was like, okay, do you have any kids? Yes, I do. And it's okay. You're in a hospital. Your daughter, how old's your daughter? 2 years. Okay, your daughter's about to die, and you pray and say, God, if you exist, come down and heal my daughter. And boom, somebody stands before you and says, I am Jesus. I heard your prayer. I'm going to heal your daughter. And puts out their hand, and boom, your daughter's life is saved. Are you going to believe now? No, I would not.
Yeah, why would
It's like,
they?
well, it's at what point are you just going to accept that either A, you're just an idiot, because I think anybody who actually observes that kind of thing is
That's pretty reasonable.
a very, very small percentage of people would still hold that God does not exist in that context. But assuming you are that person, then why are you even involved in these conversations? Because literally nothing will convince you.
And the other argument, why would they believe? You know, they cannot have fact without God. They cannot even know if something exists or not.
Mhm.
Like they could just say, well, you know, because they don't believe in God, they could just say, well, I'm just high on drug, I'm just dreaming right now, or just an hallucination. You know, nothing can convince them. They just don't want to be convinced. They don't want there to be a God. They just want to suppress him in their own self.
But here's one of my witnessing points that, again, I'm a simple guy. When I talk to someone that says they're an atheist, first, it's so important that we respect them and love them. Because a lot of them are looking for excuses to resist. And if we're idiots, they'll say, I don't need any part of that idiocy. So respectfully, I say, I can give you 2 facts that I think prove that there is a God. Could I share them with you? They always say what? Sure. And I just simply say, your eyes. And then let them process. Your eyes are proof there's a God. What do you mean? Your eyes exist. Your eyes are either the product of nature mixing chemicals together over a long period of time, and nature has an IQ of 0, or your eyes are the result of a God with an IQ of infinity. What makes more sense? And if you respect the person, they'll conclude, well, you know, this watch didn't happen by chance. The eyes have to be the result of a designer with an IQ of infinity. And even if they don't, they're stuck with the thought, because you personalize that their eyes are a great, amazing design and a great gift from a great, loving God.
Exactly.
Just like John smoking, words could not get John to quit smoking. He has to want to. We present a case. And a lot of these atheists, they've heard all our words. I believe a lot of them, I won't name names, some of them just, I think, have gone through a lot of suffering, and they release endorphins by fighting God. And hey, good luck. You can believe whatever you want, but don't pollute the minds of innocent kids.
Yeah, that's the worst thing. It's teaching, like, you know, I don't really mind about if someone they want to believe what they want, good for them, but don't go in school and teach those little. And you should watch it what God says before you offend one of his little children. Better for you to have a millstone around your neck than offending his children. So
Mark
yeah,
9:22.
yeah,
Yep.
it's disgusting. Like same as me. Like I think in my school they still teach that the embryo it looked like a fish and all of that. And the science book, there's still the fish and the whole process of evolution and the when it was disproven in 1875 or something like that.
Don't get me started on Heckle's embryos.
I think is that George? Is that who joined us?
Yeah,
That's right, John. That's me.
Hello,
How are
George.
you?
Mr.
How are you,
Bond.
Bill? How are you, Bill?
I expect you to die. That's our little inside joke.
No, I was interested to hear what you guys had to say about evidence. I don't think any evidence will convince them, even when you give them their own empirical evidence. They just reject it. I always say they deny, dismiss, and reject. It doesn't matter what you say to them, that's what they'll do.
Not all.
generally speaking, yes.
A lot of
Yeah.
them are just simply brainwashed. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, they're actually really brainwashed. It's, you know, in school they don't teach you how to think. They teach you what to think. You know, like they don't teach you how to go around and look at the two side of the boat. You know, they just want you to go straight away in evolution. And most of kids just learn evolution in school, and they get older and they don't even ask any question about it. You know, they don't go look the evidence for God or whatever. They just say, well, they teach it in school. Scientific said so. Must be true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's an actual practical example. The erosion rates, the geological erosion rates, have been determined to be 6 centimeters per 1,000 years. Their own geologists have calculated that the Earth's landscape should have eroded to sea level within 10 to 12 million years. Their rescue device will be, well, there's uplift. The continents go through, subducting plates, and some areas go up, some areas go down. And then you say to them, okay, let's look at that. If erosion occurred, you'd erode the top layer first, which is, by their standards, the youngest layer. It will then wash away into a basin and become the lowest layer. So if you follow the logic of all the layers, you're effectively reversing the order of the geological column. The youngest layer will become the oldest layer, and the oldest layer will become the youngest layer. But then further on, you say to them, well, hold on, if this has been happening for so many millions of years and billions of years, why do we still find the fossils? Surely the fossils should have eroded down to nothing. They still won't accept that. It's their own empirical evidence, and they won't accept it.
This is really nice. This is nice evidence. And the other one, I think it's about the salt in the water. Doesn't like that disprove that the Earth is like billion of years? 'Cause if we have been like in the whole world,
I think the maximum calculated time is about 62 million years for the salt in the water. And I mean, if it was billions of years old, nothing would live in the water, nothing. But they won't accept that either. Same with carbon-14 in diamonds. You know, you can go blue in the face trying to point out all this evidence, but they won't accept it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they don't want there to be a God. They just completely deny him. And
Yeah.
and like, what is the timeline that they teach that we evolved from apes? Like we changed to apes to human with a normal brain, like 100,000 years. Why is the world like not more populate? Why is there not like more building? Why did it took us 95,000 years to know how to find like to build a bow and car and all of that? I mean, we should be way more evolving in our society if we would be there for like thousands of years.
Well, Willie, it's 200,000 years, and what you do is just, I don't know if you've ever seen the population calculator. You do a population calculation on 200,000 years, and you say, where are all those bodies? Like where are all those bodies? There should be billions upon billions of bodies buried in the ground, but you don't find that at all.
You know, something else that's funny is if you actually go and look at the projected number of like early hominids per their own projections, I think the max number they ever expected of like at any given moment of like Neanderthals on the planet, right, was like 5 million total. And I'm like, okay, let's think about this logically for a second. For the supposed mutational differences that had to have occurred in order for the evolution to have happened, and you don't have enough. Like there haven't been enough possible life forms to account for the mutations required. Like, so how are you conserved mutations? I mean, and beneficial mutations. Like, obviously, there hasn't been enough time just there hasn't been enough time for the chimp or the monkey to human, and there sure as heck hasn't been or to hominid, and there sure as heck hasn't been enough time from hominid to modern Homo sapien to account for all of the necessary changes per their own argument. There hasn't been enough time, but it's like, no, let's just suspend that whole. That doesn't actually have to be accounted for. We're going to throw that out the window and just say that it did happen.
It's something called Haldane's dilemma, and they claim that they've solved this, but they really haven't. Walter Remind has a paper that was published in the Journal of Creation Ministries International Journal, but it was sent to a couple of the major evolutionary journals. So population. Sal might want to comment on this if he's when I'm done, because I know this is something he probably knows better than I do. But basically they sent the paper out, and basically one of the people who reviewed it was James Crow, and Crow basically said, yeah, this is a good paper, but we've known this since the 70s, so we're not publishing it, even though it's not in any of their journals anywhere. We've known this since the 70s, so we're not going to publish it. But basically what it is Halliday's dilemma, when Halliday did his calculations back in, I want to say with the late 50s, early 60s now, I don't remember for sure. Basically, he calculated that you can, in a vertebrate animal, you can fix one mutation per 300 years. Sorry, 300 generations, not 300 years, 300 generations. Now, human generation time is not short. And other animals have even longer generation times. So trying to get from one to the other based on generation times that are that short, that are that long, at that slow rate of substitution is just absolutely, it's impossible. It can't be done.
Yeah, talking about like beneficial mutation, what is exactly a mutation and how do you get one?
In his image, are you there? You can
Yes, I'm still here.
answer that one.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. I was kind of losing audio, so I wasn't sure if somebody else had started to talk. Sure. So, okay. So beneficial mutation is a very relative term. According to the evolutionists, it's any mutation that increases the fitness of an organism is beneficial. But the problem with that is fitness is relative. Therefore, beneficial mutation is relative. And Sal is definitely the expert on fitness, so I'm not going to try and get into that too much. But basically, what you have is with a beneficial mutation, they'll claim all kinds of things are beneficial mutations. I actually wrote an article asking the question: Do we even know what a beneficial mutation is? Because they call all kinds of things. They call one of the more ridiculous ones that I've heard out there is the oh goodness, sickle cell anemia. That's the one I wanted. Sickle cell anemia. And they've called that a beneficial mutation. Well, yeah, it's beneficial in the sense that people with it don't tend to get malaria as easily, and if you live in West Africa, that tends to be a good thing. But it also is miserable to live with. Absolutely miserable to live with. And so, hello to Bill's family, by the way. But sickle cell anemia is incredibly miserable to live with. You can't struggle to keep oxygenate your body because your blood cells are misshapen, and so you can't carry oxygen as well around through your bloodstream. And they call that a beneficial mutation. Well, maybe if you're living in an area that's infested with malaria, it's beneficial, but it's reductive, as Sal talks about. It's a reductive mutation. It breaks something. And you see this a lot with a lot of the beneficial mutation. I actually scrolled through a list of evidence for evolution that included a bunch of so-called beneficial mutations.
I recall reading a paper where they mentioned that if both parents have got the sickle cell, their offspring, I think, live to about 13 years old. So I can't see how that's going to be beneficial to anyone, really.
George, what they argue is that the heterozygote, which is they get one of the one parent has it, the other parent doesn't necessarily have it. If they get one allele from mom that's good and one allele from dad that's bad, they can. The heterozygote is more resistant to malaria, and now, but the heterozygote still has to suffer through the unpleasantness of having a reduced oxygen supply. It's not as bad as in the homozygote, but it is very unpleasant for them.
Yeah, amazing.
A good young Earth argument, if you guys, and again, I'm Mr. Simpleton, is I'll say, go on Google and search for oldest human civilization. They all are about 5,000 years old. Now, does that mean that ape men crawled out of caves and all of a sudden started building pyramids? But every ancient civilization had language and complexity. And to me, that's a very powerful argument that humans showed up instantly, very smart. And of course, we believe after Babel started building complex civilizations.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
And I'll augment that just a little bit by pointing to the fact that we have pyramids in Egypt, but we see similar structures all over the world. We see them in Southeast Asia. We see them in South America. We see them in America. They're not pyramids necessarily, but they're buildings that are structured in a pyramidic type shape.
right.
yeah, and about those pyramid, I've seen like they say that they have historical fact that the pyramid were built before the flood. Have you guys ever? They don't have any of that, right? Just
No.
Okay, there's a lot involved there. I don't want to go too far off the rails because Egyptology is not my forte. But one thing I do know is that the Egyptian chronology that they use to date those pyramids is an utter mess. It was invented by I can't remember the guy's name now, but it was in the Egyptian chronology was invented by
some Frenchman. It was some Frenchman.
Well, no, the guy who discovered it was some French guy, but the reason the Egyptian chronology is such a mess is because it's relying on a history that was written by a guy who was writing for the Ptolemies. Now, the Ptolemies were the Greek rulers of Egypt who inherited it after Alexander the Great's empire broke up. And so basically they were trying to establish their legitimacy as rulers of Egypt. And so this guy wrote a history that was meant to do that. It was propaganda, essentially. And in his history, he got all kinds of facts wrong. He made a mess of the dynasties. He extended how long they were in existence. He ignored co-regencies and made them two separate kingdoms. He ignored the fact that Egypt was split into the upper, lower, and middle kingdoms, and that some of these kings reigned at the same time. So he extended the Egyptian chronology by thousands of years. It is an utter mess, and there are literally we're still trying to untangle that mess today. Even among creationists, there isn't a completely accepted Egyptian chronology, just because they made such a hash of it that we still haven't figured out exactly what all they did wrong.
Yeah. In his image, if there's one thing I would love to do is get on a time travel machine and go back to the time of the Alexandria Library, the one that was burnt down, and literally photocopy and take photos of every document they had in there. Imagine the information that was lost.
Oh my!
Will?
yeah,
Many years ago, Steve Austin told me the pyramids were built out of rocks that were probably formed as a result of the flood. So most likely the pyramids were post-flood because they were built out of sedimentary rock.
Yeah, they're a sandstone. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So,
I mean, like, isn't like, could we even say that the flood is like a historical facts and a scientific facts? Because there's so many evidence for it, and I think it's an amazing proof of the creation. I mean, it's like, when you go into, like, there's a place in Canada, it's like Gaspésie, and when you go there, you have like all type of giant rock break from each other. Just look like if something break them down really powerful. I mean, if you just look at the rock, I think there's like a Harvard University teacher. He says like the rock doesn't lie. It does not lie. It just proved that there was a flood. I mean, and the Bible even prophesy like that coming. It says that they will be willingly ignorant that the water were under all the earth.
That's right. Well, I think it's fair to call the flood a historical fact, and I think we've got a lot of good evidence for it. I'm not a geologist. I'm not going to pretend like I know all that much about the flood. I do think at least one person here knows more about it than I do, probably two. But I think that just looking at a couple of real tiny details, like a lot of times when we find dinosaur bones, for example, although other bones, this would apply to other organisms as well, they're found in giant bone beds. And of course it's laid down in sedimentary rock, which is laid down by water. I think that's most of the time, if not all the time. Again, I'm not a geologist. But you look at that, and the evolutionists will always come up with something like, well, this herd of whatever drowned crossing a river, or they were, a local flood carried them away, and it's a continual thing. I see this multiple times when I read and I don't even really read the geology papers that much, but when I do, it's like, yeah, we had this local flood here, and we had this local flood over.
Yeah.
It just like, guys, maybe it wasn't a local flood.
Yeah, it's because they assume evolution in that, like you said, they try to just say, well, give it like, billion of years, there'll be flood around everywhere that will do everything we need. But it just failing at explaining. And evolution is a total mess, and I think it's probably scientifically dead.
Well, it's scientifically dead, but it's kept alive by the ardent willpower of the scientists supporting it.
Hey, George,
Yes.
it's time for your question. Ready? And
Oh.
we'll pay close attention, okay?
All right.
Okay.
Can you bend the concrete?
Yeah, you can form it in that shape, yes. But you
Yeah,
can't.
Will.
Sorry?
Okay, go ahead, George. Go ahead, George. I'm sorry.
I know where you're going, Bill. I was actually going to bring up the bent shale layers that are cap rocks for the oil. As I presented two papers, and there's more than that. Shale doesn't bend without cracking unless you're at least at 4.5 kilometers depth. The problem is we find these shale cap rock layers at 2 kilometers depth. So the way I've been having this sort of back and forth with a couple of the guys on the comment section, and they said, no, you're not considering the plasticity. They're saying if you apply a constant pressure and the horizontal movements will slowly bend that shale over time without cracking. And I said, no, what they're explaining is this term called creep. Even creep, in a very brittle material like shale, will induce cracking. There's no way out of that. But they bring in this imaginary rescue device where they say, if this happened and that happened, then it could be like this. And they bring in like I don't know if you know about the Moore's stress circle. And they say if it managed to be at that point, you could get it bending without cracking. It's just all imaginary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like science fiction stuff.
Yep. It's the SpongeBob imagination.
Yeah.
What I like to say go ahead, George. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like I brought up in that video a couple of days ago about the oil exploration. They know if that bent shale cap rock layer is found at 2 kilometres, they then have to account for 2.5 kilometres of erosion. And when you do the calculations based on their own rates of erosion, that works out to about a minimum of 42 million years. That's like 4 times the landscaping eroding 4 times in that period, and the whole logic of the whole process just doesn't work. But they make it work by bringing in all these imaginary scenarios of what may have happened and could have happened.
Mm.
Yep. George is way, way, way smarter than me. So what I do with simple stuff is I'll ask someone, can concrete be bent?
Can a what?
What would you say? Concrete. Can you bend concrete?
What is that? Is that a rock or something?
Concrete. Your curb, your driveway, your sidewalk.
Cement.
Nope. Only a water flood. Only like a big like the water sucking it could do it.
Well, you can bend it when it's wet.
Yeah, exactly.
I used to actually install curbs when I was in college and high school. You can do anything with concrete when it's wet.
Correct.
But once it's set, you can't bend it. So, Will, could you please Google bent strata? All over the planet, I'm sure even in Quebec, where you're come from, there's bent strata at an angle.
Yep.
You cannot bend rock when it's hard, but you can bend it when it's what?
Yep.
When it's soft.
Yeah, and that could not happen with the what is it called? Uniform materialism or something like that.
Right.
That could not possibly be true because they isn't it like what they assume that everything happened like it used to happen, like everything will happen like the past. But we literally find like there's like a sand like kind of mountain, like it's like it looked like bread sand, and it's like perfect sand at all the place, and there's not even a bit of different type of material. How can that happen? Are you saying like for 45 million years there was like sand on the same place magically?
Right.
I think it's just like what the flood did.
So please Google
Yeah,
bent strata.
I got it here.
Okay, and remember that. You can only bend it when it's soft, like a curve in front of your house.
Yeah, this is an amazing proof of the flood, proof of Noah's flood. I mean, we have a
And
lot of
Bill,
that in Canada.
Bill, they're having fits over the fact that we've debunked their you need to date rocks to find the oil. That's just a bunch of baloney, you know. I got sick and tired of hearing that, and I thought it was about time we put it to bed. And I invited David McQueen, the associate professor, was associate professor at CMI, and he pretty much agreed with everything that I said. But they still try and get out of it by bringing in some new scenarios like basin modeling. I don't know if you know anything about basin modeling, but it's nothing but assumptions and interpretations, and they just keep at it until you know it doesn't have to sound plausible. As long as people swallow it, that's all they care about.
Yep. This is really amazing. Real quick, may I just talk about something else real quick? You know when Christ died on the cross, right? In the book of Matthew, it record that there was an earthquake, right? And there's actually a early church father in the 80 AD that quote an historian in the 50 80 that record the earthquake of Christ, and he record the sun being dark and everything, and he quote the exact same word as they're found in the Bible. This is really amazing historical proof that when Jesus Christ died, like everything started to break down and the sun was darkness. I mean, they have everything in their evidence in their face. And, that's what the Bible says in Romans chapter 1. It says that on that judgment day, they won't be able to say to God, but God, I thought Darwin was right. I didn't know he existed, No, every facts are related to God. It's just how we know he exists. I mean, the whole point of facts that we even exist and know we're there, it proved that God exists, right? Because it's just amazing. And
Yeah, Willie,
go ahead.
sorry to interrupt. I have to go, but before I go, I just want to tell a short joke. That I think Sal might have missed it during his live stream. Sal, are you listening?
Yes. Coffee or ice cream for Sal?
Yeah, no, but this is the joke. Why are all archaeologists so annoyed, always annoyed?
Why are all archaeologists always annoyed? So annoyed.
Yeah. Because they always have a bone to pick.
Oh.
Oh, come on.
That would apply to paleontologists
Bravo.
too.
Okay, so hang on. You said I told Sal the joke about the roof, but he couldn't remember it. No problem. It went right over his head.
Yeah, you got to say it correctly.
Who designed King Arthur's round table?
That's
circumference.
Correct. Yeah. That's it.
What kind of clothes do kangaroos wear? Jumpsuits.
Well done, Sal. Yeah, good one.
How can you tell a male ant from a female ant? You throw them on water, the female ants sink, but the male ants float because they're boy ants.
That's it.
Why can't you trust atoms? Because they make everything up.
Oh, well done. You remembered them all.
Getting
Uh,
worse.
You should be
I
on,
still don't get the
Las Vegas
boomerang
now.
joke. What was the boomerang joke?
Yeah. What do you call a boomerang that doesn't come back?
A
A
stick.
stick.
I don't get it.
Well, a stick doesn't rotate like a boomerang and doesn't come back.
Okay, thank you. I tried to
Anyway,
laugh
I
anyway.
I have to go, guys. God bless you.
God bless
bless
you,
you.
brother.
Hey,
Thank you for
hey,
coming up.
George, one more, real quick, if you don't mind.
Yes, Bill.
Have you guys heard about Einstein, Pascal, and Newton playing hide and go seek?
I've heard this
Yeah,
one,
have you
Bill,
heard-
but I'll hang around for it.
Oh, you heard it?
Yeah, you told me this one ages ago.
Okay, Sal, have you heard it? Okay, Einstein, Pascal, and Newton are going to play hide and go seek. They decide Einstein's going to be it. Okay, so Newton runs. He gets a piece of chalk out and he draws a square 1 meter by 1 meter. Einstein comes and looks and he goes, "Hey, I see Newton." He goes, "No, I'm Newton over a meter squared. I'm Pascal."
I don't think the non-engineers will get that.
Who got it? Who got it?
I got it.
Newton per meter
Guys,
squared is a Pascal.
Yeah, in engineering, a Pascal is a Newton over a meter squared. That's what Bill was trying to say. Yeah.
Okay, I think I got it. Newton over a meter squared is a Pascal.
That's it.
I didn't
Oh,
know
well,
that.
that's all right.
Got it.
I'm embarrassed.
That's an
I should know
engineering
that.
joke. That's an engineering joke.
Yeah. George died of laughter when he heard it the first time.
I did too. All right, guys. Nice to talk
Thank
to you
you.
all.
Hey, thank you for coming up. God bless you, brother.
God bless you guys. See ya.
See ya.
Hey, Saul.
Yes. Thank you for coming. I just wanted to tell In His Image we need to talk about fitness sometime. I'm sorry I brushed you off so much, man. I really apologize. And I'm sorry I had a hard time putting you in. I don't see all the icons all at once. And I didn't know I had to scroll down.
It's fine, man.
I'm
It's
sorry
fine.
for the delay. So we'll talk fitness sometime. I think I'd like that to be one of our shows because some of the things you raised in your article, the Dapper Dino challenged, that's something I'm actually not familiar with. So
Okay.
you could fill me in. Have you read my article on Fisher's theorem?
Probably not. And if it has a lot of math, I probably won't.
The second
get it.
half
So
had
just
math.
be
The other
honest.
part was fairly accessible. So
Okay.
let me get back to Will. Thank you. Yes, please.
Yeah. You have a PhD on what again is your PhD on?
My what?
Yeah, you said you have a PhD last time on the stream. I don't remember.
No. I have 5. I have 2 master's degrees and 5 bachelor's degrees.
Oh, maybe
You could see them there. Oh, the one on the extreme end that's tiny. That's actually my pilot's license. I didn't get a degree from my last master's because it was kind of virtual from the NIH. It's a master's equivalent. So my undergrads were in computer science, electrical engineering with a minor in music. My minor in music was piano performance, voice, and composition. A bachelor's in mathematics with a minor in physics. I got a master's of applied physics at Johns Hopkins University, even though it was really kind of theoretical with general relativity and astrophysics and quantum mechanics, which I've forgotten so much. I'm so embarrassed. And then recently a master's equivalent in biology from, it's not an accredited or an awarded degree from the FAES Graduate School at the National Institutes of Health.
Wow, you're such a knowledge. You seem to have a lot of knowledge in you, and I would like to do a job like that later on. Maybe like study the universe or something like that. I don't really know what I want to study yet, but I definitely think I want to do something for God to, show other Christian that, in 2020 it's possible to believe in God and believe in science.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for telling me that. So I don't have any advice to give. I think computer background is good. I'd say that's very, the best thing to do is just ask around what skills are in demand. I, I sometimes think I should have been an auto mechanic or something.
Sal, I mean, not to cut you off, Will.
Yeah.
Will, do you consider yourself a people person, or do you kind of like to do things on your own?
Oh, I like being in. Was that for me or for Saul?
For you?
Yeah, I like being around people. I don't mind each other, but I always like to be in my own like place and do like my own study in my own way. You know what I mean?
Because I'm kind of a loner, and I love engineering where I can just work things out and deal with people instead of being around people all day long. So when you choose a career, make sure it's something that you have a passion for.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a job, and of course, glorify God through it. But you don't have to be a pastor. You can just make good money and do ministry on the side.
Yep, I really like I'm looking into Christian apologetic right now. I'm listening like to it's on a Discord. They have like a lot of guests there. I don't know if you ever heard about Dart Dawkins.
I've heard his stuff, and a lot of people come down. I get a huge kick out of the guy.
Yeah, they don't like him because he always exposed them, and when they start speaking over him, he just mute them down, which is always funny. But I definitely want to do something for God in this world, and just like you said, glorify His creation, and it's amazing.
I would say my quick advice is be a tent builder like Paul. Have a good, solid career, but you can still do tons of apologetics on the side.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I wanted to ask you something, Saul, about like the. Are you a young creationist?
Yes, young cosmos creationist too.
Oh, that's
there
really
are
amazing.
some young Earth creationists that believe the cosmos is old. Those are usually from the Seventh-day Adventists. So, I mean, I'm good on good terms with them scientifically. I don't agree with them theologically, but I go a little bit farther. I wasn't always a young Earth creationist. I was an old Earth creationist most of my life, for like 30 years. So,
Yeah. I wanted like to ask you something about the beginning of the universe, right? So like, would you say like it's how could I explain that? Yeah. So the whole universe, right? People said like the light years away from us. You know, like we can see thing like 16 billion years light away from us. Like this prove a young Earth creationist. How do you point everything out for that argument? Did I make sense or?
yes, that's the distant.
Oh, yeah.
That's called the distant starlight problem. It's a very serious problem for young Earth and it's a serious problem for young cosmos creationism. It's unsolved. A lot of young Earth creationists don't like me saying that, and I'm just like, well, you got to level with people and say that there's still problems in the young Earth model. I mean, serious problems. It's like, but what I say is the problems we have tomorrow doesn't mean they won't be solved. I mean, the problems we have today doesn't mean that they won't be solved tomorrow if the Lord grants. Because I've seen a lot of things in the young Earth model that improved over the last 40 years, and also in the intelligent design models. So I try to level with people that want to try to defend young Earth creationism. It's like, guys, God has hidden a few things away, and it's taken 2,000 years for us to get to the point where we are, where He's starting to show us some of the stuff with the tools we have, and that I believe that was ordained by God. So I try to be cautious in saying what are really good arguments, and try to say and just admit that there are serious problems. The reason I say that is because I went through a physics curriculum. I've studied astrophysics, and I'm just like, if more young Earth creationists had gone through what I had gone through, I think they would be seeing what I'm seeing. It's like, yeah, we're doing really, really, really well in biology, and you could probably tell I felt very emphatic about what I said tonight. You won't see me say that about physics, which was actually my strongest discipline of study. But one reason I undertook that discipline was I was hoping to be able to contribute to finding solutions, and I'm still trying to work on it. But right now, God is just handing us everything in biology. We haven't quite won the physics battle yet. It's not ours to win; it's God's to win for us,
And
and it'll be in His timetable. And that's why I actually get along very well with the old Earth creationists, because I was totally there, and I'm not going to go out and say you guys are compromising, because I totally know what they're struggling with. You see, it's very easy today to be a creationist in biology, whether old or young, because the data is just screaming at us. It's so bad for the evolutionists and abiogenesis researchers. Just like tonight, I was trying to point out, they're practically making the case for me. I didn't have to, call them compromisers or whatever, or appeal to theology. I said, just look at what we have now. You're just not going to be able to refute this. On the other hand, I've debated astrophysicists through text, not a live debate. And I'm like, yeah, goodness, I'm not gonna win any debates with them anytime soon on the distant starlight problem. I probably would be able to put some dents in the Big Bang, but the distant starlight problem is still very serious. And the other one that's not quite as serious for moving forward is the radiometric dating. So you're asking what to do? I think I don't have any advice except the common sense of just try to learn as much as you can, and just ask around and see. I like the idea of being a tent maker, because you can make yourself valuable. And particularly in apologetics, there are people that are doing a lot of talking, and they're really not. It would help if we had more people that were chemists that could actually speak the language well and competently. So I myself wish I knew more chemistry. So I think all the hard sciences I would focus on. I've not been very impressed with some of the philosophical stuff, meaning I don't think it should take 4 years to learn some of the philosophical arguments. If you start needing 4 years for it, then maybe it's going down roads that won't be very effective. That's just my opinion. The other thing is, if you have a skill that is useful in the workplace, it'll keep your chances of surviving alive. Because I can tell you the churches are not very friendly toward professional apologists. I've been trying to beg my church. I've been a part of 2 churches recently. I can't beg them enough to let me start teaching like Sunday schools. I've never been invited. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we know where your priorities are. That's kind of how I feel. So I'm just kind of leveling. You might be surprised. Like, do you go to a church? What size?
What? Are you asking to me?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I was going to a church, but I found out there were theistic evolution, so I left the church. But there was around like probably, I would say, 120 people.
And they didn't have any. How many Sunday schools did they have on Noah's flood or creation or anything like that?
I would say none, honestly.
Yeah. You know what?
only
Even
did one.
in yep, that is very, very typical, and it's disheartening.
Yeah,
And you may find out the hard way.
Yeah, they teach more about the Bible, about like salvation, about like how the world is, and they teach about like grace and all of that stuff. But I wouldn't say I never heard them about having any conference or any like talk about like the evidence for such stuff. And I think it's really heartbroken because it could give children that are like 15, 16, 17, 18 around there that go to school and go to the process of brainwashing, having good evidence and set up their mind more like, sleeping in the night and not doubting God, or say, is that, doubting, the flood, or saying it's might be local, not global, having the evidence to be prepared, as the Bible teaches. Always be prepared to give. Why do you have so much hope inside of you, and give an answer to every question we ask?
Yeah. So that's just I think what Bill recommended is good, and I never thought that I would be doing what I'm doing now, and I was. God can use wherever you are to His glory. Just keep an open heart, and
Yep.
the best example was the one I gave at the opening of my talk, the thief on the cross. You could take all the mess of your life and God can redeem it. Thank God for that. Because he made a pile of really bad decisions, but he ended up in the right place by God's grace in the end. And I was just like, yeah, I needed to hear that, because I'm kind of hard on myself. It's not like I've lived a terrible life, but they're just like, oh man, if I could have done this a little different or that a little different. And it's like, no, I can't think about that. I have to just think about trusting God that He's gonna, if I'm concerned about loving Him, He promises to work all things for the good. That's why that example of the thief on the cross meant a lot to me. It also is very comforting, because if you love God, no matter how much you mess up in terms of the world standards, you'll be all right. And so there are probably some decisions in my life that weren't ill-intentioned, meaning it wasn't out of a sinful desire, but it's like, oh man, really simple things like choosing a college or choosing a discipline. It's like, oh man, I wish I could have that one back. Or choosing an employer. I mean, they're all well-intentioned. It wasn't like I was trying to do anything overtly sinful, but I've had to say, you know what? I can't focus on that. I can focus on loving God. He'll make it all work for the best in the end. And that's about the best I could say. And
Sal?
Yeah.
Remember when I quoted Columbus McCoy earlier, the third grade educated genius I worked with, where he said everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die? Another brilliant thing, and I love to share this with people, I'll share it with you. Columbus McCoy, my construction buddy, said, Bill, what's done can't be undone. Could you repeat those words, Sal? What's done can't be undone.
What's done can't be undone.
You pick that job, let it go. Just let it go. It's the distance, it's past the horizon. People live onto the path too much. You can't change it, so just let it go. All your mistakes, Will and Sal, just let them go.
Yep.
Just deal with Christ now and in the future.
Yeah, well, the Bible, it's beautiful. If you go to Colossians chapter 2, verses 13 to 14, it says, Him on the cross, He took all of our punishment and nailed it to the cross one for all. No, and in Isaiah chapter 53, which prophesied Jesus, he says, He was struck, and through his, his striking, his everything that He was hurting his back, all of his pain, He took all of our shame and all of our debt on Himself. And that's what the Bible says. It's the Bible. It's beautiful. It's just really what you need. When you're sad or you find everything, you need wisdom. Go to Proverbs. You need to feel better. Go read the Psalm. Everything. It's Bible mean basic instruction before leaving Earth.
It's a mirror. Oh, my distant starlight. You might not divert. Sal, can I share my distant starlight answer with you and Will and IHI?
Can I interrupt for 30 seconds, Bill?
Sure,
it is 2:30 my time, so I need to go to bed.
Yes.
So,
no problem.
Sal, thank you very much for letting me join the
What's
stream.
your first name, IHI?
I go by a screen name because of where I work.
Yes.
So my pen name I work under is Emery Moyna. Emery's fine.
Emery. Okay, Emery.
One of these come out. Yes.
We'll be in touch, and I didn't mean to blow you off. It's just that when I heard Dapper Dino, just like, oh my goodness, and that the whole thing blew up. And
I hear you, man. No, look.
But what I wanted to suggest is, I think it'd be good to have. Would you be interested in a public discussion where we just have a discussion? We just go through literature.
Honestly, it will be you talking and me listening. But that's fine. I'm more than happy to let you talk and me listen, and I'll try to ask somewhat intelligent questions periodically.
Well, and then remember, I'm not a biology student. They're actually what ended up happening is I ended up being really specialized. Even in population genetics, there are parts that I'm really good at, and others I'm just terrible at. So, you see, I'm not interested. Unlike a lot of people on the net, I'm not eager to be debating for the sake of winning a debate. I'm trying to find out. I'm trying to actually write books and get it cleaned up. So
I hear you.
The process of being on the internet is the way I can get editorial feedback. And I also, this is something like a poker game where you're trying to get the other side to just reveal their cards.
Yeah.
And so what I'll say, I did, well, you know what I'll usually do is they'll say you're wrong, Sal. It's like, well, thanks for the editorial correction. I'll acknowledge you in my book. I mean, they really hate that. So
I've seen how you interact on the Peaceful Science Forum, and you basically use them as peer review. I think that's very clever. I like that.
I mean, if you think about it, I'd like to think that that's why my lectures are strong. It's because it's actually been through peer review by really hostile, not just not your typical internet guys, but some of them are Harvard level researchers that are there, like Steve Schaffner, and like, you guys didn't say a thing, and you had all the opportunity to say something. Like, okay, I know that, I know this is strong, because they'll jump over other stuff, like the geology stuff, which I know not enough about. So I just wanted to point that out. I don't approach debate on the net in the idea, so we have to put on such a good show, everyone will just like applaud you. That's
right. Yeah, I hear you. Honestly, I'm not much for debates. I avoid them. I don't want to waste my time on people who really don't want to be convinced. But if someone comes at me with a challenge, I'll at least think about it, thinking it up. Like, he's come at me before with geology stuff, and I've gone, nope. I'm not a geologist. I'm going nowhere near that.
And I'd like to go through your article because I'd like to understand it a little better. That's also what because I was like, oh my goodness, I did read it, and I'm like, some of the terms I'm a little foggy on.
Okay.
So my specialty was in areas of Fisher's fundamental theorem, and that's a very narrow topic, and then also neutral theory. But then I've also studied alternate notions of fitness. And you kind of saw it when I was showing the potassium ion channel. One could see that if it's mutated, at best you hope that it doesn't degrade the function. At worst, it breaks it, but it's not going to make it better. Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to do that. You got my email, so
okay, we'll be in touch. Thank you for joining and also bailing me out when I was running out of gas. So thank you so much.
Fine, man. That's perfectly fine. I'd have joined earlier, but I was sitting on my Christmas tree. So
all right. God bless. We'll talk again, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Have a nice one, man.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah.
If you see me looking over here, I'm trying to figure out why my simulcast broke. I don't know why it broke, because now it's halfway working. So I'm going to get on the Standing for Truth channel and try to see if I can simulcast there. If he's doing this, is he debating Erica?
No, he's debunking her.
Oh, all right. I need to find out. Goodness, he's
going hard on her those past week. He's doing a lot of debunking Erica. Yeah, go ahead, Saul.
No, go. And she's not really a molecular kind of person.
Yeah, she just make a lot of claim without knowing a lot of stuff she claimed. But real quick, before Bill go with the Starlight problem, I have like a kind of theory for the starlight problem that I know like it doesn't prove anything, but like how I see stuff is when God created everything in the Garden of Eden, right? He created it with an apparent age, right? So like when he created Adam right away, she was like he looked at like old when he was probably like 1 month. He looked at probably like a 20-year-old man, and same for trees. He make them grow right away. So maybe God could have do that for the starlight. And I mean, if you look at the planets, right, they look pretty old. So he probably give them an apparent age too.
Well,
Go ahead,
Bill,
Sal.
go ahead.
Well, first, I'm not buttering up to Sal, but we have a kindred spirit. We both agreed to stay out of a dispute that we knew nothing about, as you know, Sal, right? There was a dispute going on. We both, no, I'm just stay out of it. Simplify your life, Will. One of the worst things you can do in life, in my opinion, is to pretend you know more about something than you really know.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can be humiliated like Godless Programmer was. He goes by Godless Engineer. He's not even an engineer, he's a programmer. But he came off as a DNA guy, and Maddox shredded him. So, Will, your whole life, you're better off being honest on your limitations.
Yep.
So, on the starlight problem, this is what I say. If I meet an old Earth person, I'll say, if I were you, an old Earth person, that would be my number one argument that I would use. And I fully respect it because it's a very, very difficult problem for me as a young Earther. And they'll respect you for that. But then I go on from here, Will. And do you mind if I quiz you, Will?
No, it's no problem. And real quick before you go ahead, yeah, this is what I realized whenever I was talking to atheists. Like, I feel it's better to say if you don't know about the subject, just tell them, oh, I don't know how to answer that. Let me like do a bit of research about it, and I'll come back to you. Because if you try to be like so much like he's just gonna humiliate you. Just better tell him right away than telling him something you don't know about.
And even write down their question. Say, I don't have an answer. Let me write it down. They'll
Yep.
respect you. But on Starlight, I'll quiz you, okay, Will?
Yep.
And I'll just pretend you're the old Earther. Have you ever heard of a light year?
Yes.
Okay, one word answer, Will. What does a light year measure?
The distant starlight.
What one word answer? A
Light.
light year is a measurement of what?
Light.
No. Distance.
Distance. Okay.
Okay. One word answer. If something is 13.5 billion light years away, it's really what from us? One word answer.
I
Far.
wouldn't. Star. Okay.
Far. F-A-R.
Far.
Far.
Okay.
The universe is really, really what? One word answer.
Giant.
Right. Big or giant. So I say to a person, we can both agree the universe is enormous, right? To me, that doesn't necessarily mean it's really, really old. Shaquille O'Neal, you ever heard of Shaquille O'Neal?
Isn't he like the father of modern light? Isn't he like a 1800 person?
No, Shaquille O'Neal was a huge basketball player, but I'm older than him. Size does not always correlate to age. Just because the universe is huge does not necessarily mean it's billions of years old.
Mm-hmm.
I would say for us to say that would mean we know everything about light, space, matter, and how light travels through space. So I acknowledge it's a good argument for an old universe, but I say light years only prove a huge universe. But I will acknowledge they have a good point, but I still maintain that I believe the universe is thousands of years, not billions of years. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're a general in an army, the worst thing in the world is not to take a step back every now and then. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But to just charge mindlessly can discredit you. And to encourage you, Will, I this is just me. I doubt anyone will come to Christ about the argument of the age of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe a lot of people will come to Christ knowing that they are a design, that they're not related to ape men, and that there is authority in God. And to encourage you more, Will, I don't think you ever need to know incredible deep, and I love what Sal does, but to lead someone to Christ, you don't have to get a PhD in biochemistry. Okay?
Yep.
The deepest I get, typically on college campuses, high school, the pier in Huntington Beach, is apes. Here, I asked the person this. I said, I'm going to quiz you, but I'll start with this. Apes make apes. People make people. What do kangaroos make, Will?
Kangaroos.
What do ladybugs make?
Pardon, what did you say?
What do ladybugs make?
Ladybugs, I guess.
And what do giraffes make?
A giraffe.
And I tell the person, that's biochemistry. That's genetics. That is everything we observe. There are no transitional specimens, fossils, or organisms. Will, your only ancestors are human.
Yep.
That's biochemistry. And I love to ask the question, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Do you know the answer?
Yep. It's the
What is it?
chicken.
Well, it's two chickens. One male, one female. They were
Mhm.
created by a god. Is that a miracle?
Not really. It's just the glory of God.
It's a miracle.
Okay,
But
a
it's a
miracle.
much more fathomable miracle than to believe matter and energy bounced around and made circulatory systems, digestive, muscular, males and females. We have a much smaller miracle than the godless atheist.
Yeah, because they believe like nothing created something.
Yeah, nothing created male and female birds.
Exactly.
That's
With
an emotional response to someone trying to push God out of their life.
yeah, and I always ask them. They say, "You believe a dead man, rose from the dead from the grave 3 days later?" I'm like, "Don't you guys believe that dead material created life somehow?"
Very
You
good.
know, same thing as it's more of a miracle because if you think about it, the one that rose God was God the Father. He rose him, so he had the glory to rose him. He had the power. He's an intelligent being, but that material doesn't have the power to do that. It's not guided.
Will, have I ever shared with you my favorite witnessing question that I share with everyone I meet?
Nope. Yeah, you never.
Oh, do you have a pen?
I can. Let me open a folder. I'll type it on my
Okay.
computer.
I was witnessing for 29 years and I never felt that effective. My daughter went to a seminar for evangelism, and glory to God, over 600 people have prayed with me in the last year and a half to be forgiven and have Jesus as Lord, and it's because of this question. Okay?
All right, go ahead. I'm gonna note it.
When I met, let's just say, a waiter I met the other day in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
I said, "This is the best place to start." I said, "We developed a somewhat a relationship. Here's my waiter. Can I ask you a question?"
Mm-hmm.
Always start with that, okay? And people will always say what?
Yes.
Yeah, they'll say yes. Now you've got their full attention. Look them straight in the eye with kindness, respect, and love, and ask them. This is the best witnessing question ever. What do you think will happen to you after you die? And I ask it with respect and kindness. And then you button up and don't say anything. Let their mind process.
Mm-hmm.
Will, why do you think that's a great question to ask a
Does
stranger?
it make them think and make them reconsider what's really gonna happen?
What percent of people do you think silently think about their death?
Well, they'll say, "I hope there's a heaven and afterlife."
Right. A lot of people say, "Oh, I hope I go to heaven." I've heard that a lot, and I'll say, "Great, me too." according to the Bible. Always say
Mhm.
that. It doesn't matter what you think. Well, according to the Bible, you ask the person, who goes to heaven?
According to the Bible, biblical calendar, no one should go to heaven, but Jesus provided the evidence that the sacrifice for our sin. So who go to heaven? The believer.
No. And the reason I say that is Satan and his angels are believers. According to the Bible, you go to heaven if you're forgiven.
Yep.
And you're forgiven if Jesus is Lord.
Yeah, Jesus. Yep.
Satan believes, but they're not forgiven and they don't have Jesus as Lord.
Yeah, because they don't accept his sacrifice.
Amen. I believe a lot of murderers, mass murderers, believe in God, but they don't have Jesus as Lord. You see? We need to submit to his lordship. You'll never, never, never be perfect. But if you're not, please, Matthew 7:21, depart from me, I never knew you.
Yep. You worker, depart from me. I never knew you. You workers of iniquity.
Wow, you are a gift. You are a gift.
Yep,
So,
the Bible says, Matthew chapter 7:21, not everyone that saith unto me on that day, Lord, Lord, shall enter into my kingdom, but those who do my Father will. And
amen.
after in John chapter 6, the Father wills that you believe in Jesus and you'll have eternal life. And after there's many that will say unto you, God, but God, look at what we do. Look at our works. We cast devil in your name. We're so good, God. Who are we for not you letting me to enter to heaven? But the Bible makes it really clear that it's not by our works, it's by our faith.
Right. And we need to treat him like the boss. And again, you'll never be perfect. But that's lost in the church a lot too. That we have to repent. We have to seek his forgiveness and humble ourselves to him. Now, Will, here's my quiz. Ready?
Mhm.
I personally would never say to a stranger, you need to be born again. You need to be saved. You need to ask Jesus into your heart. Why would I never say that to a stranger?
Because it's not the best way to approach them. It just put them, oh, he's a crazy believer. It's the way to go like slowly with them. And I think that the best way to approach like someone is saying, well, like you said, what do you believe happened after life? And they'll explain. You engage a slow conversation before going to God. You say, well, is that not horrific to believe that there is no afterlife, that Jesus died and nothing happened? All of that type of stuff. Because thinking about it, imagine you die and nothing happened. It's terrified to say that nothing's never going to happen again in your life. This is horrible.
Well, I never say saved, born again, or ask Jesus in your heart to a stranger because 99% of people have no idea what you're talking about.
Exactly.
But they do know what forgiven means.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people do a lot of good, but we all know deep down we sin a lot and we need forgiveness.
Yeah, and Jesus is the only way for
Right.
forgiveness.
So use the word forgiven, especially with Catholic people. They know what forgiven means, but they don't know what born again means.
Yeah, because they trust on their own self rather than the living God.
Amen. So if you ask people that question, but you got to do it with kindness, respect, and dignity. And
Yep.
people will just eagerly, they will pray with you. Oh, I believe in closing the deal. I asked the waiter, this is just one example. I said, I would be really honored if you'd like to pray right now to ask God to forgive you of all your sins and have him as Lord. Would you like to do that? And people say yes. And say, from this day forward, read your Bible every day. Treat Jesus like he's your boss.
Yeah, treat him as as your father. Jesus make it really clear that what the Father want is a true worship and in spirit and in truth. And you should approach him as like kind of a friend. Not like
Yeah.
you approach him as And the most important thing I think that's trusting in him and knowing that when something doesn't go good, he is the one that's going to provide a way. Jesus make it clear, John chapter 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man can come to the Father but by me. So, God makes us what He wants. He wants us to, trust in Him because He's the living God.
Would you role play an atheist for me for a second, Will?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I debated a guy named Ron Garrett. He was a very nice guy. Sal, did you debate Ron?
Yeah, he's a super nice guy. He's not a disrespectful atheist. He's a serious guy, and I've watched a lot of his debate against. I think he debated Ken Hovind. I'm a big fan of Ken Hovind. I enjoy Ken Hovind stuff, and Ron, the one you were speaking about, like he's a smart guy, but I wish he could turn to Christ and use all that wisdom for God.
Well, I email Ron every now and then, and I emailed Ron, and I said, Ron, I ask this with respect. Suppose you met a teenage kid, and he said his family was a mess. He was living with an uncle. His girlfriend dumped him, and he just hates his life, and he's thinking of ending it. I said, Ron, what would you tell this young man? Guess what Ron told me? Sal, you can guess too.
He told you should help him and try to get him out of the situation.
Okay. Now, he's an atheist, of course. Sal, what do you think Ron said? I said, this kid's just got a miserable life. He doesn't care about life. It's hopeless, meaningless. What would an atheist say to this young man?
Your mic is muted, Saul.
He would have said, "Don't end your life because you might find out later a reason for going on." What did he say?
Ron said his exact quote, and he said, I can quote him. He says, it gets better. So I said, Ron.
It doesn't get better, it gets worse.
It could. But that kid could get cancer. He could get shot. He could get hit by a car. He's lying to that kid that it gets better. It could get worse. Will, someone could receive Christ and they could get cancer the next day, right?
Yep.
What we got to tell people is there's no promise that things get better in this life. But what I love to tell teenagers and adults, here, Will, I'll just do this with you. And I know you're a born again believer, but I do this all the time with teenagers. Don't tell me what it is, Will, but think about your biggest problem, okay? Everybody's got problems, but don't tell me what it is, okay? Now I say to the teens, please repeat these words after me. Could you repeat these words, Will?
Yep.
Dear God.
Dear God.
Thank you for my eyes.
Thank you for my eyes.
Thank you for my ears.
Thank you for my ears.
Thank you for my hands.
Thank you for my hand.
Thank you for my feet.
Thank you for my feet.
Thank you for my ribs.
Thank you for my ribs.
You are so good to me.
You're so good to me.
I would tell that depressed teenager, absolutely you have problems. You'll have problems your whole life. Your problems are about 5 feet tall. But I urge them, young man, you've got 1,000,000 blessings. When you are depressed, thank God for 5 blessings. You got nose, you got a teeth, you got lips, you got a shoulder, wrist.
You got your ears especially.
And Will, I want you, and Sal too, whenever you're depressed or discouraged, take a little time out. Thank God for 5 things. And these teens start smiling by the time I get to the hands. Because life is great when you are thankful. Life is horrible when you're thinking of a problem and miserable.
Yep.
Will, you will be discouraged, depressed, sad, feel lonely, unloved at times. Take a time out. Thank God for 5 things.
Yeah, and I want to quote this verses. It's from James chapter 4, verses 14. You do not know what your life is going to be like tomorrow, for you're just a vapor that appears for a little while and vanish away.
Yes. But the atheist has no answer to the depressed teen except, hang in there, guy. I can turn around. What an empty theology.
Yeah, it must be horrible to believe that you're just like a monkey that just there, and you're just gonna get away, and all that is in life is just reproduce or evolving better. It's really sad to believe that. I mean, I understand why like there's like such a like high like suicide rate into the atheist like worldview. If you compare atheists to Christianity, like the suicide rate there is enormous. It's because life is just nothing. There's nothing good according to the atheist worldview, and it's really sad to know when the Bible, the God of the Bible is let the children come to me. He's such a loving God. He make a lot of truth claim, and he is the truth, and that they want to reject that for their own pridefulness.
Sal, have you ever heard of the rock group Queen? I'm sure you have. Did you see the movie Bohemian Rhapsody? It's about Freddie Mercury, and there was a lot of gay stuff in it. But Freddie Mercury, have you ever heard of Queen, Will, the group?
Oh yeah, I kind of like their song. They have pretty good song.
I do like their songs, I'll admit it. Well, Freddie Mercury was the lead singer. He had power, money,
Yep.
friends, sex, everything he wanted. There was a scene in the movie where they had a huge party, and he's cleaning up with this other person. And do you think he was really, really happy or extremely miserable after his huge party?
He was merciful because he believed he can have everything, so there's no more objective in life.
He was miserable, and he said to the other guy, everybody needs anesthesia in life. Everybody needs painkiller. Everybody feels pain. Sal does, you do, I do, the atheist. We have a solution for our pain, and that's thankfulness to God. We have someone to be thankful to. The atheist is in a dark, lonely place.
Yep. And this is from First Timothy chapter 6, verses 10. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some covet after they have heard from the faith and pursued themselves through with many sorrows. So, the Bible says that the love of money, the root of evil. No, it's like that other guys, which I really appreciate this song, Linkin Park. He was a rich man and he had everything he needed, and he ended up hanging up himself in his house when he had like 3 kids and a wife and everything. And this is how you see that money's not gonna bring, it's not gonna bring what your flesh wants. You always need more, 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 more. But there's a place where the Bible speaks that the sin will lead into death. You always want more, more over and over again. And if you seek after sin, then you're not gonna obtain everything after Christ. As God says, lay no treasure in earth, lay them all in heaven. For there's no thief, murder, any type of stuff. It's only the truth of God that is there. So it's better having treasure there than in this earth, because you're not gonna get anything good here. And if you look at all rich people, they do all type of evil stuff to get where they get.
Well, not all of them. But here's a question for you, Will, and I'd love to ask teenagers this. Can getting drunk make a person happy?
No.
Wrong. For about an hour, they might feel great.
Mm-hmm.
Could it ruin their entire life?
Yes.
How so?
They can get addicted. They can do during that they're drunk. They could kill someone. They could like fornicate with a woman and put the woman with the baby. And after being with the conscience of killing a child their own entire life. So yeah, it can definitely run your life.
What percent of Americans in federal prison were drunk when they committed their crime?
Yeah, that wouldn't still make it right.
40%.
40%. Oh man, 40%.
And that's only drinking. They might have been high on drugs too. So I love to tell teenagers, drinking can be fun for an hour, but it can ruin your life. I'm going to ask you an adult question because you are an adult, Will.
Mm-hmm.
Could having sex with a cute young lady that you're not married to make you happy?
Yes.
Absolutely. Could it ruin your life?
Yes.
How?
You can put it with child.
How else?
I mean, you break God's commandment. You do thing that God doesn't want. I mean, people could take video and put it everywhere. They could do a ton of stuff for it.
She could get pregnant. She could give you a disease. You could break her heart. You could feel guilty. And nowadays, a lot of women are saying, he raped me.
Yep.
The guys say, no, I didn't. Yes, you did.
And honestly, like I feel it's a really blessing from God because like sexuality is not really something that interests me that much, like and I feel like especially now in the child age, like pornography is really a lot for some certain type of people. I mean, it's pushed everywhere. I mean, if you go look into like whenever they have clothing, whenever they have like clothing parade, like when they release new clothes everywhere, they always put sexy woman, and like they like kind of glorify their up and everything. I mean, they try to make people tempt, and especially how women are dressed nowadays. They always say like to men, "Why do you look at me? I mean, you're dressing like kind of a, it's not modelist."
The one mistake you said is nowadays. Remember what David liked about Bathsheba, right?
Yeah.
Men have always, we got testosterone. We can't help it. But we got to have self-control. Every sin in the Bible can be fun for a little bit, but every sin can what?
Lead to that.
Absolutely. It's a snare, it's a trap. And teens that don't have what I call the God option for dealing with pain try to deal with pain by sin,
Yep.
and it
And
makes their life worse.
yeah, and they push like every child now in school or most of them under medication, because they teach that theory of evolution and all of that, and bring Christ and like bring people into atheism at such a young age, which is really sad. And they're always depressed. I mean, if they were teaching the Bible in school, or at least not pushing atheism, I mean, none of that would happen.
People need to drink from the living water. Amen, Sal?
Yeah.
Sal, would you like to add anything about sin and consequences? Have you seen people ruin their lives or anything you'd like to share?
There are a couple things that are pretty personal, not me, but my family members. You know what? Maybe I will share. One guy, one relative, drugs. He was by age 20 he dysfunctional permanently, and that was bad.
Yeah. And
Another one, um, pregnant, unhappy marriage, 40 years, terrible. So me, I dodged some bullets. I nearly died at age 16 playing with fireworks that I built. I still have a scar over my heart. I could have died. I could have lost fingers.
Oh.
But you see that wasn't with bad intent. Like I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I didn't realize what I was constructing was very explosive. But even I think the things that are a little scary is like I've nearly fallen asleep at the wheel. I guess on many levels I live kind of a boring life. It's not like I got in a lot of trouble, but the substance abuse is a big one, and I'm glad I never did that. So I think um, I, I think I think what's scary is even people that live relatively, what I would call prudent lives. They just don't do silly things. It's bad. It's hard enough trying to live the straight and narrow and just adding more problems to yourself. That's all I could say. Because it's hard enough if you don't drink and smoke. I mean, if you don't drink and you don't engage in certain activities, it's hard enough just to make it through without adding more problems. Because I know some of these people that have went through divorces. I would never want to go through that. Oh goodness. I mean, unfortunately, some of the people that are. Oh, hang on. I'm gonna give you I didn't see. Hang on. I'm gonna try to send you an invitation.
Yeah, just copy like the link and
Let me see.
I
I'm
think
sorry.
there's one
I'm
description.
having another Joe Biden moment here because I ran out of gas. There you go. I'll just say that it's just hard enough. So you could tell I'm really tired, and I'm trying to fix why my simulcast broke down too. So when did Faithful come by? Are you there, Faithful? Ping me. I tried to get you to join.
3 minutes ago.
Yeah. So I sent a link you can click. This is Restream, not StreamYard. This is Restream, and I don't know where I was, but just trying to do right. You still have so many problems. So I just don't. I would just say I wouldn't try to do anything to add to it. Now I will say. The righteous will encounter problems, and it's getting a little more painful to be righteous. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry I can't really give you. You need to talk to answer your question, Bill. We need someone who's really been through the ringer, and he can tell you what not to do. Because it's not like I've lived a great life either, but most of my stuff did not would be probably on the order of maybe not caring too much about myself, but I'm the sort of person that would care a lot about myself, but then try to not break any rules. That's just kind of the way I'm wired. And I'm trying to think of because I just haven't met I've met a lot of non-Christians that Ron Garrett being one of them, that just seem to have lived a model life. I'm just like, oh my goodness. He cares for the poor. He's very generous. He's very kind. I wish I could be like him. I mean, on so many levels. And I'm just like, what he often says is, why has God been so good to him? And I'm just like, yeah. So, so people that are not right in their heart with God have prospered, but the Bible, the Psalms especially, has covered that. And it can be actually kind of discouraging sometimes when you see people that don't know the Lord that prosper and live also, like Ron Garrett, very upstanding lives in society. Um, and I've met his family, just lovely people.
Really?
Yeah, really lovely people. I met them through Zoom,
Okay.
and yeah, and I've been invited to his Bible study, but just lovely people, but they don't know the Lord. Um, and I have to say it has troubled me sometimes that people can live so uprightly and they kind of put a lot of Christians to shame, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
because I see how some Christians behave, and I'm just like, guys, if you need to at least behave just as honorably and kindly as Ron. And oh, here, Jason, here you go, bro. Hang on, I'm gonna try to. There, welcome,
Oh,
brother.
hey man,
Speak
Joe
your
Biden.
mind. I'm totally running out of gas, and I'm just
Yeah, I
trying to
know,
work
mate.
on something else.
I'm tired too. I've been running around all day, but I'm going to use that one Joe Biden moment. I like that. Yeah,
Is it a curse word?
Joe Biden brain freeze moment. That's it.
Hey,
It's
Joshua.
always
Alzheimer's moment. Joe Biden dementia moment. I'm going to call it.
Joshua,
Yeah,
what age
that's a
did
new
you?
term in our household. We use it all the time now.
I don't even
Joe
want to think
Biden.
about it.
Joe Biden brain always freeze.
Nah. Yeah, I understand. I don't want to think about it either.
Yeah.
I know a lot of stuff. I've been researching it really, really deeply, everything that's been going on. I mean, I could go on for 2 hours non-stop and tell you stuff that's been going on. I mean, but we won't get into it, so that's why he doesn't want to think about it. I've got so much information in my head about what's been going on, it'll just blow your mind. But I'll just, let's forget about it. Let's talk about something else.
Okay. What age did you become born again, Joshua?
Me? I don't know. Unless when I was a Catholic before the Catholic Church went all satanic evolution. So, and we believe in the Trinity and all that different stuff. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know. They believe in works, don't they? They don't believe in born
Yeah,
again.
they believe you have to. The
Yeah.
Catholic Church view is if you do one sin before you die, you're going to hell, even if you're a believer your whole life. It's what they call mortal sin. So they'll say if you, let's say, I'll give an
Oh, that's
example. If
right.
you say a lie before dying, then you're going to hell. That's their. It's basically they don't trust on God. They trust on themselves rather than the Creator.
Yeah.
But Joshua, were you a party guy in your past?
Oh yeah.
I love to ask people this when I go witnessing. Have you ever
Of course I was.
Have you ever woken up on a Saturday morning, slapped your head, and said, "What was I thinking about last night?" Never happened to you, Joshua?
About 2,000 times, at
Every
least,
time
maybe
it was a
3,000.
sin. I love to tell people every time it was a sin that you regretted, right?
Yeah. Oh,
It's never,
yeah, for
why did I
sure.
play Scrabble last night? Why did I give my dog a bath? And it's so important. Sal shared about his brother that or one of his relatives on drugs. My heart breaks.
Yeah.
He didn't plan on ruining his life. He was looking for a little bit of fun. And Joshua, you were looking for a little bit of fun, and then you wake up Saturday saying, "What am I thinking?" Sin is such a snare for everybody, and God's way is the best.
Yeah, well, my friend here that lives here, just before he died and went to hell and was sent back again, he was on 10 grams. He had a 10-gram heroin habit a day. 10 grams. I'm not kidding you. He'd have 10 shots a day of 1 gram of almost pure heroin. Mate, I swear his blood must have had so much heroin in it. If I took the blood out of his body and injected it into myself when he was like that, it probably would have OD'd me.
That's a
He
lot.
OD'd.
Pardon
Yeah,
my total ignorance, man. What would that's an
well,
awful lot. One gram.
Well, a gram of heroin is worth about, back then was worth about $300 of really good stuff. I've never used it, but I mean, like, I know that it only takes about, when you first start on heroin, this is why people get addicted to it, because it's such a cheap drug. It only takes about $5 or $10 worth to get off your face. And then the next day it'll take 20, and the next day it'll take 100, 50, and the day after that and a week later you'll be on $100 worth a day, and then a month later you'll be on $200, and then 300, and it just keeps growing and growing
over and over.
Yeah, it's exponentially growing your addiction. It's incredible. So yeah, so 1 gram of heroin would be enough to OD probably about of pure heroin, probably about 10 or 20 people like that haven't got a tolerance. So he was taking enough to OD 10 people 10 times a day. So he was taking probably enough each day to OD 100 people. That's how much he was having. That's a massive amount. And he died. He was sitting in the bath, and he had a big shot of heroin. He was sitting in the bath with his missus, and he slipped under the water, and because he just fainted because he had been off it for a while. And when you've been off it for a while and then you have your usual amount, you OD. And so he slipped under the water. She fell asleep. When she woke up, he was under the water and he was completely blue and not breathing. His heart had stopped. She dragged him out and called the ambulance. And then she was trying to work on him the best she could. And then the ambulance got there. And by the time the ambulance got there, his heart was still stopped. And we worked out that he was dead for probably at least an hour, but officially dead for about 25 minutes to half an hour officially. So with no heartbeat, no brain activity, with monitors on him, and in that time he was in hell. He was in a really black place, and then all of a sudden he just wasn't. He was back again, and he actually punched the what you guys would call a paramedic, ambulance guy. Punched him in the face. As soon as he woke up, he was just lashed out and punched him in, like not knowing where he was or what was happening, and this guy was over the top of him, and he punched him in the face, and he felt so bad about punching the ambulance guy who saved his life in the face that he followed him all the way down the stairs, profusely apologising to him, and the guy kept saying, "Don't worry about it, it happens all the time. We see this sort of thing all the time." So, yeah, well, but I don't see people die like that. Yeah, of course he is, and a Trinitarian.
Yeah.
And a Christian. Yeah, he's now he is.
I mean, if you have that type of experience and you don't become a Christian, I mean, I think you have a mental disability or something.
Well, he didn't become a Christian like a true Christian. He still did crime for about 20 years after that. So, I've seen stories of people on the internet who have been into drugs and that and died. Like one guy died twice. And he kept coming back and doing the wrong thing, and God kept on, so it took him a long time for him to eventually get it all together.
Yeah, it must be really scary to die and ending up in hell and coming back into.
Well, he went into a lot of people when they die and they come back. Some people go into, like one guy, he went into this really dark place. It was pitch black dark, like liquid darkness, but it was just dead quiet, and it was quiet for a very long time while he was quiet, and then he said, "Where am I? Why am I here?" And they said, and then he heard a voice say, "Because you deserve it." A really demonic voice.
Yeah,
and that's when he realized that he called on Jesus because he remembered his mum was a Christian.
Amen.
And Jesus come and took him, and he so when Doug died, he went to like that black place, and he was just lying on his back in this black place, too scared to move, too scared to say anything. He just remember lying there, shitting himself. He said it was so dark there that when you put your hand in front of your face in a pitch black room and you can't see your hand 1 inch in front of your face, he said it's darker than that. He said it's a million times darker than that. It's like just pitch black liquid darkness. Like it says in the Bible, it says when God brought the darkness over Pharaoh, he said it's going to be a darkness that can be felt. Well, where he was, it's so dark there that any light, powerful spotlight would be the light of the spotlight would be consumed by the darkness instantly. So it's like that. Let's put it this way: if you were where Doug was and you had night vision goggles on, they wouldn't work because there's no trace elements of light to pick up to enhance. You know what I mean? So yeah, hell's a place where God removed himself from, a really black, dark, like, can you imagine pure light removing itself from a place completely and utterly? Even when you're in a black, dark room where you can't see your hand an inch in front of your face, if you put in night vision goggles, they'll be able to pick up the small traces amounts of light in the room and enhance it so you can see what's going on. But in hell, if you put night vision goggles on, you just see black. So yeah, it's scary there, man. It's real scary. I've seen the supernatural too, but I won't go on about that. But it's yeah, and
Yeah, only Jesus is the light. He's the light that's going to shine in darkness. That's what the Bible says in John chapter 1. That the light has
yeah,
came to bear the witness, and the darkness did not comprehend. Because Jesus demolished sin. He demolished them, that there is no darkness in every believer, because God is the light.
yeah.
Well, I gotta get going, guys. Sal, Will, and Joshua.
Yep. Hey,
Thank you.
Bill, real quick, if sometime I email you and sometime you want to have a discussion, that could be really nice. I don't know if you ever do that, but that would be a nice.
I would love it. You're in Canada?
Yep.
Okay, I'll send. Did you email me yet? I'll definitely reply.
Wait. Yeah. Let me see. Yeah. I got your email here, Bill Morgan, and you have a dog picture with You have a dog picture with her on his head. Is that you?
I'm not sure. BillyJack1 at hotmail.com.
Yeah, I got you here. It's
Okay.
BillJack1@hotmail.com. Yeah, here you
I'm
go.
a dog guy. All right. Well, thank you, Sal. Keep up the great work. Joshua, God bless you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
God bless you. Thank you for everything, Bill.
Yeah, sorry. Boy, giving a talk just totally got all my energy out. So
What a
good
talk.
night. Thanks for helping me with my after show. It wouldn't have continued if you guys didn't join.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah,
Anything
Take
I can
care.
do to help you, Sal, I will. And Sal, if you come to California, stay at my house for free, okay?
Thank you.
Huntington Beach. I mean that.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Oh,
You're ending up the stream. Good night. Have a nice one. God bless you,
Good
Bill.
night.
all right. See ya. Good night. Have a good night.
Did you want it to end up the stream, Saul, or what was it?
Oh no,
It's
well,
up to you.
we'll stay on a little bit longer. I'm just
Yeah, well-
trying to fix. I had a problem with my simulcast tonight when I was trying to simulcast my talk from the SFT channel, and that's all I'm doing right now, just trying to figure it out. But Jason's here. How are you, friend?
Oh, good. I was just busy running around today. That's all. I had to run into town twice. So I've done 160 kilometers driving today, and then all other stuff, and dropping cars off and picking them up, and going to mechanics and paying mechanics and all sorts.
Yep. Jason, do you remember? Oh, I think
What happened?
he probably left by accident. Do you see him in the waiting room?
And I don't see you, Jason. Where are you, bro?
He's probably gonna look to join up. Post another link in the chat, maybe.
Oh,
there you go.
so Jason, we lost you. You're talking about mechanics?
Yeah, it just dropped. Yeah. Oh no, don't! I almost hit the leave button. Oh well, that's good. Yeah. Just all that stuff. I've just been running around all day. That's all. It's not important. I've just been drove about 160 kilometers today, and yeah, all over.
Oh, he probably hit the button again.
Mm-hmm. Oh well. Out there in Tasmania, it can be. I wonder how the internet, the quality of the internet there. So, I'm trying to figure out. Hang on, I know what I'm.
Yep. Try to. Maybe he's gonna. It just keeps.
It just keeps dropping. Well, bro, we have a saying in Australia. It says, "Which family? Every bloody family."
I have a real quick question for you, Saul.
Yeah.
You know about the whole beginning of the universe, right? the beginning of the universe cannot happen without God, right?
I believe that, yes.
But let me ask you that real quick, because there's atheists that try to say like there was only like neutron or something like that. You know what I'm talking about?
Um, keep trying to describe it. Maybe it'll ring a bell.
Yeah, like this, it's a type of a vacuum or something like that. Like that really didn't need a cause. But isn't everything that's material need a cause?
We can't establish that absolutely. That I I know what some people see. This is an apologetic argument, and there's some that are just like, well, uh, if I tried to debate that, I wouldn't be able to defend it adequately, because you would have to actually know everything to absolutely prove that, because that's based on an assumption.
Mm-hmm. But the material, like, can a material listing can be eternal? Let's say, like, if the universe at the beginning was had matter, right? Can that matter always exist?
We don't know.
Oh, it's still something they're trying to study about.
No, it can't be definitively. See, I've heard all these arguments before by defenders of the Christian faith, and I'm just like, that's that is an extrapolation. How can anyone absolutely know that unless they've been everywhere?
And at every time, right?
Right. So this comes from stuff like Thomas Aquinas, and uh, I just don't think it holds. We have these statements that could be true. So Faithful, Honest, and True said it would be Google Soros hackers screwing with a feed. Long story. Oh boy.
But what's the best evidence for God creating the universe that he would had?
Uh, fine tuning. But I don't even go there.
Yeah.
Let me explain. See, I
Mhm.
don't like all these arguments, that any argument that claims that it's proof. I get suspect, because I don't think Jesus ever said this is how you prove God exists. I don't recall a single
Exactly.
verse.
He
What
says you believe because you have not seen. You take it by faith. When he was talking to Thomas, he says, "Thomas, thou believe because thou hast seen, but blessed are those who have not seen, but yet believe me."
I okay, this is a good discussion, and I'm not going to even say that I'm right, uh, but I think the only way you can prove God exists is you have to be God yourself.
Amen. Yeah.
And so any of these people with mortal finite minds claiming that they can
Prove
prove,
God.
yeah, I don't buy it. And the
Exactly.
scriptures teach, Jesus said you have to be like little children. And what does that mean?
Mm,
Everyone will interpret that verse differently, but this is how I take it, is that a child only knows so much. He cannot possibly
know everything.
know that in a very simple relationship, him and his parents, he can't possibly know um, his parents' motivations and how good they'll
Yeah.
be to him. I mean, really, kind of the sad thing is there's some parents that have killed their children.
Sadly, yeah.
I mean, the accounts in the Bible of these horrible parents burning their kids, and it's like, well, you tell the kid, well, how do you know that he's not going to do that or not? And the kid will say, well, I can't possibly know, but what choice do I have?
Exactly.
And that's how I feel, is that we can't possibly know, but we can have faith,
Exactly.
and that faith might be as simple as the other options I have are definitely bad,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I say. And so I've actually boiled it down. I've asked atheists this. Uh, first thing I'll say is, well, what do you have to offer me if I adopt? Why will atheism make my life better?
Exactly.
I don't think I'd be curious to find out what answers you get. Why would it make my life better? Why do you have meaning? How do you know you're absolutely right?
Exactly. And
Um,
yeah, they don't really have like a lot of explanation for knowing stuff and everything. And a last question, and after I think I'm gonna be hopping
yeah,
off.
yeah. Well, okay. I do want to tell you, a lot of people will not like the answers I just gave you,
No, it's. I think
especially
it's
the full.
fine. I think
Oh, thanks.
your point of view is really good, and I think I do agree with you. We should always look at the two side, right? Like we should not say like yes, but we should always look at right and left. You know, like
And I asked. I mean, this is kind of a good way that. I mean, one way that I looked at it was, um, and I asked an atheist this. I said, I asked, okay, that passage in John chapter 9 where the blind beggar was healed,
mhm.
if that happened to you, would you trust in Jesus from the moment your eyes were open and Jesus told you he was the Messiah? I've had atheists say no, they
Yeah,
wouldn't. They'd want to
exactly.
find a naturalistic explanation. They would question why isn't everyone healed? And I actually, when I first asked that question, I thought they would be reasonable and say, yes, I'd follow Jesus the rest of my life. I was shocked. And
Yeah,
I continue to be shocked how many would say, no, they're not going to serve the Lord. And I thank them for being at least honest enough, but it it took me aback. I said, that's what it really is. Some
exactly.
people, there's nothing's going to be enough. Other people like myself, it's like, well, goodness, I don't have any options. If I were a blind beggar and I didn't know where my next meal was coming from, and I couldn't see a thing, and all I could do is just keep crying out and hoping someone will have mercy on me, and then someone comes along and opens my eyes, and he tells me he's the Messiah, and he's offering eternal life, I'll take it. What do I have to
Absolutely.
lose?
Exactly. What about last question before I'm gonna be hopping off? The multiverse. Is it a myth? What's your view about it?
I don't believe it, but the way I put it, I wouldn't bet my soul on it. That's uh, there are many decisions in life where we have incomplete information, or we have
Hmm.
possibilities we cannot possibly confirm because we're limited. We're like little children. But I say, what would we bet our souls on? And
Exactly.
I've just posed that. I said, are you willing to bet your soul on it? Because if you're wrong,
It's gonna cost you a lot.
yeah, if the Christian God's real, that ain't a good payoff. And what if you're right? What do you gain? What do you gain? I
I'm
mean, do you
believing in
expect
it.
you're going to die and just fade away? So, what have you gained uh, by postulating a multiverse that you can't even prove yourself?
Yeah, and exactly. I don't believe that. I personally don't believe it because there's no evidence. But does that mean it doesn't exist? No, it's not because we don't have evidence that it does not exist, right?
And really, it's like it's not the real question. If Jesus healed you of your blindness, like in John chapter 9, would the multiverse matter? What would really matter, Jesus or the multiverse at that point?
Exactly.
There are people I really think who'd probably say, no, the multiverse would matter more to them than Jesus. And I'm like, okay, that kind of
That's really yeah.
clarifies where everyone's. Because if I were that thief on the cross, am I going to be thinking about the multiverse?
No, you're gonna have to be thinking about where
Is
you're
there any
going.
comfort in that? Is there any hope? Is there any meaning? And I'm just like, well, you know what? There are many
Amen.
things I don't know, but I know there'll be no reward. As a matter of principle, even the advocates would tell you there's no reward in believing this. And there's
Yep.
no chance of reward. But the Christian, what Jesus offered, even if we're not 100% sure, that's just too good of a chance not to try. We take a risk of being wrong for the things we really love.
Amen.
And if you really want it, even if you're not 100% sure in terms of all the facts, which you can't be anyway, you'll go for it. You'll serve the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and you'll just keep going, asking Him to reassure you. And I could tell you, you see, the question is, it's understandable they'll pose the question, do you believe in the multiverse? That's the wrong question to answer, to be asking. The question is, what will it do for me?
Yeah, would that disprove the
and,
scripture of God? It wouldn't, right?
I'm sorry?
I said that wouldn't change a lot if the multiverse is true. Would that disprove God? No.
Yeah. And would it solve my deepest needs? I mean, I would just like, no. I guess if I accepted it as true, it wouldn't solve my deepest needs. And they can't prove it exists anyway.
Exactly. All right, so I'm gonna be.
Well, thank you for your kind words. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for. If you saw my show, thank you so much for watching it.
All right,
And
God bless everyone, and
God bless.
you. Have a nice one, sir.
Take care, Jason, bro. I know Keith. Is this software Chinese by any chance? Search it and see, because the CCP has many of this type of software out there so they can hack your information. That's a good question. Google servers are rotten with bugs that only seem to or mostly affect Christians. I never thought of that. Those are really good questions. Jason, if you're there, if you don't think you'll be rejoining the stream, I'll probably just have to end the stream. We have, I don't know how many people watching. It indicates 2. Okay. Well, it's really nice to see you. And here in the United States, at this time of year, we have a holiday called Thanksgiving. So I'm going to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. And you take care. And maybe I'll see you before Christmas. All right? I'm going to type you a message. God bless you. God bless you. Good night. So everybody, I'm going to close the stream shortly. So first, here in the United States, when a broadcast station shut down, when I was growing up, they had a very special sign off, and it was just beautiful. And I'm gonna put it in the screen share, and that's how I'm gonna end the evening, because it's so beautiful, and I'd like to just share it with our viewers and listeners. And oh wow, thank you for everyone who's here. So I'm gonna share this thing on the screen, and it's in the Chrome tab. High flight. So enjoy. It's only 1 minute long. God bless you and good night.
Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things you have not dreamed of. Wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up, up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the windswept heights with easy grace, where never lark nor even eagle flew. And while with silent, lifting mind, I trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God.